Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
A hospital corridor. A greenish-tiled old man peered into my eyes. From the daylight lamp, long children's thoughts stretched out. The ceiling echoed in his temples. Jenna nervously fingered the bracelet on her arm. Walked back and forth along the corridor, adding the clatter of heels to the sunset of the lamps. She sat down, trying to calm down, then jumped up again. The doors of the operating room echoed with a rustle and a slight creak. A doctor stepped out of them. Jenna jumped up again, looking hopefully at the medic. "Doctor, please don't be silent." She folded her arms across her chest in a pleading gesture. "The odds are 50-50. What will get up from the wheelchair?" The doctor finally said, tightening the mask around her chin. Jenna sorrowfully sobs again. "You have to believe in the best. He is still young. He will recover," cheered the girl medic. And I wanted to believe in the best. Of course, Jenna was worried about her husband's health. But she was more concerned about the loss of the family's main income and the question of who would now provide for them. Jacob drove out of the hallway to meet his wife returning from work. Jenna was not in a good mood. Lately, this state had become a constant for her. She had to get up early, work, do household chores, and still take care of her invalid husband. "How was your day?" Jacob asked, taking the girl's bag and bag from her. "Disgusting," abruptly threw Jenna, taking off her coat. Jacob left for the kitchen. He was quite briskly handling the stroller and could even boast some mobility, if it could be called that. The man moved the bag of groceries to the floor near the refrigerator and began to open the door. He could only put the groceries on the first shelf or the bottom of the door. Oh, and it would spill over here now. Jenna snatched the bottle of milk from him, which she had opened on the way out, slammed it down and closed it loosely. It wouldn't leak to the neighbors. "Why are you yelling?" Jacob looked at her. "Would someone wipe it up? Are you talking, Jenna?" She felt developed and irritated by her husband's helpfulness. He realized his limited functionality, so he tried not to inconvenience his wife. At first, Jacob was even ashamed, but later he accepted his condition and stopped suffering from remorse. "In a bag of ready-made cutlets from the cookhouse. Heat them up for yourself. Can you manage?" "I'm tired." Jenna pulled down her temples with her hands and went into the room. The couch echoed with a faint creak. The cat was rubbing his leg, begging for a tasty treat. Jenna sat like a sorpus, fictional, lethargic, and universal. This wasn't the life she'd envisioned when she married the handsome athlete Extreme Lego. And now he's deprived of his outlet and his livelihood. And she has to work for two, running all over town, showing beggars. The family's cheap apartments. Not so. Jenna planned to spend her youth. She didn't. The husband had been in the chair for 6 months. At first, they had lived on old savings, but those soon ran out. Jenna had delayed until the last moment to look for a job. She was scared, and her inner ego was against it. By the age of 25, the girl had no sensible experience. She worked part-time doing shoots for online clothing stores, ran a blog of a young stylist, although she had a good education in the hospitality business. Realtor. No longer had it passed her by since the early days. So, all useless people, incomprehensible payment, running around, a lot of calls, the need to persuade someone, ride on the ears. What was it that kept the girl in such a flying place? The charming director and owner of the agency. He appeared there rarely, but every time it was in the office, the morning began. The entire small number of female staff began to intensively tidy up, correct makeup, check the manicure. And this was done, as well as very young female students moonlighting in their spare time, and an elderly accountant. Jenna also fell under the influence of Michael's charms. And the more time passed, the wider the gap between her and Jacob became. Jenna stopped believing in the mythical prognosis of doctors, and counting on chance is a thankless business. But here he was, a living, handsome man. Even if it is not hers yet, but it is only a matter of time. Such thoughts swarmed daily in the girl's head. There was a constant struggle between duty, feelings, selfishness, and conscience, and that evening's selfishness and inner whims won out. Jenna at some point realized that she did not care at all about the opinion of others, that she did not want to support an invalid husband until retirement and to cross out her whole life with it. She too deserves happiness, deserves the joy of being a girl, not a frontal horse on her neck cart. The decision came in a moment. Strangely, such a momentous turn was made on an ordinary couch in an ordinary city apartment on an ordinary March cerebral evening. "Are you going somewhere?" asked Jacob, watching his wife pack a pile of things into a bag. "Yes," Jenna nodded briefly. "We're going to your mom's." The dwarf even raised an eyebrow in surprise and smiled with the corner of his mouth. "What kind of nonsense is this? The daughter-in-law herself wants to go to her mother-in-law's house." The daughter-in-law was giving up to work for two. Jenna tossed Jacob's sneakers into the bag with an apt throw. The man fell silent, and Jenna just burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore, okay? I can't. I'm beautiful, I'm young, I want romance. I want a decent man by my side. I want care and affection, not to look after an invalid." "Jean, I'll get out of the wheelchair," Jacob interrupted her. "The doctors said there's a chance. Or maybe you won't. I'm sick of this." Jenna threw in her bag another couple of t-shirts and with a precise movement zipped up the zipper. "Are you staying at your mother's? We need to live apart for at least a few months. 6 months. I don't know." They were both silent. Jenna was getting behind the point being made. Jacob realized that he was being discarded as an unnecessary thing. Indeed, what good is such a helpless and useless husband? And aren't you afraid of hanging off the ground on that inflatable mattress? Fellow Kevin pushed, barely landing, Jacob in the shoulder. "Don't go into the forest to fear the wolves," the man grinned, laying the foam on the grass so that he could collect it without getting tangled in the slings. Jacob and Kevin have been taking tourists on extreme mountain tours to the Caucasus for 5 years. The guys had tried everything that could tickle nerves and make your body shake. Rafting, jump rope, quad biking, long-distance hiking, mountaineering. But most of all, Jacob was interested in paragliding. He spent almost the whole summer in the mountains. He flew, tried, learned, took bumps. He whacked his knees on landing. Once he dislocated his elbow, caught on a tree paraglider, and fell from a height of a couple of meters to the ground. The air of freedom and the charm of the mountains beckoned the stubborn guy who flew where others were afraid, and stayed under the clouds for so long that his fingers began not to have from the cold. Jacob began to ride tourists when he himself was already convinced of his own skill. So the guys worked Kevin for the driver and organizer, Jacob for the coordinator and implementers of extreme entertainment. In 6 months, the guys earned so much that the other 6 months could not work at all. But they didn't. They simply changed the style of travel, and instead of a couple of plans, they went snowboarding and skiing with tourists. "Oh, Jacob, you are finishing your stuff. If you fall off that high, you're still picking bones." His mother, Adriana, nodded a couple of times. But the guy liked living like this. It's 100 times better than sitting in a stuffy office poking at buttons. Dangerous. So what? It's dangerous to sneeze in public these days. So what? Now I'm not going out. Of course not. You have a great education. Go to the bank, make a career. My mother wouldn't stop, and the children will go too. Will you go to the mountains? No wife, no kids either. Mom, why are you bothering again? Jacob sighed tiredly. Parent was in her repertoire. Talks about the dangers of paragliding and frivolous with the tourist business were repeated regularly, even if it brought decent money. With Jenna, Jacob met in a social network. He was bored on a winter evening. Guy scrolled through the newsfeed and came across the page Pretty Girls. Something about this brunette rather caught the young man's eye. Word of mouth. They went on a couple dates. The girl was impressed by Jacob's boldness and passion. He took her on several trips, even offered to take her paragliding, and that evening selfishness and inner whims won out. Jenna at some point realized that she did not care at all about the opinion of others, that she did not want to support an invalid husband until retirement, and to cross out her whole life with it. She too deserves happiness, deserves the joy of being a girl, not a frontal horse on her neck cart. The decision came in a moment. Strangely, Such a momentous turn was made on an ordinary couch in an ordinary city apartment on an ordinary March cerebral evening. "Are you going somewhere?" asked Jacob, watching his wife pack a pile of things into a bag. "Yes," Jenna nodded briefly. "We're going to your mom's." The dwarf even raised an eyebrow in surprise and smiled with the corner of his mouth. "What kind of nonsense is this? The daughter-in-law herself wants to go to her mother-in-law's house." The daughter-in-law was giving up to work for two. Jenna tossed Jacob's sneakers into the bag with an apt throw. The man fell silent, and Jenna just burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore, okay? I can't. I'm beautiful, I'm young. I want romance. I want a decent man by my side. I want care and affection, not to look after an invalid." "Jean, I'll get out of the wheelchair," Jacob interrupted her. "The doctors said there's a chance. Or maybe you won't. I'm sick of this." Jenna threw in her bag another couple of t-shirts and with a precise movement zipped up the zipper. "Are you staying at your mother's?" "We need to live apart for at least a few months. 6 months. I don't know." They were both silent. Jenna was getting behind the point being made. Jacob realized that he was being discarded as an unnecessary thing. Indeed, what good is such a helpless and useless husband? And aren't you afraid of hanging off the ground on that inflatable mattress? Fellow Kevin pushed, barely landing, Jacob in the shoulder. "Don't go into the forest to fear the wolves," the man grinned, laying the foam on the grass so that he could collect it without getting tangled in the slings. Jacob and Kevin have been taking tourists on extreme mountain tours to the Caucasus for 5 years. The guys had tried everything that could tickle nerves and make your body shake. Rafting, jump rope, quad biking, long-distance hiking, mountaineering. But most of all, Jacob was interested in paragliding. He spent almost the whole summer in the mountains. He flew, tried, learned, took bumps. He wiped his knees on landing. Once he dislocated his elbow, caught on a tree paraglider, and fell from a height of a couple of meters to the ground. The air of freedom and the charm of the mountains beckoned the stubborn guy, who flew where others were afraid, and stayed under the clouds for so long that his fingers began not to have from the cold. Jacob began to ride tourists when he himself was already convinced of his own skill. So the guys worked Kevin for the driver and organizer, Jacob for the coordinator and implementers of extreme entertainment. In 6 months, the guys earned so much that the other 6 months could not work at all. But they didn't. They simply changed the style of travel, and instead of a couple of plans, they went snowboarding and skiing with tourists. "Oh, Jacob, you are finishing your stuff. If you fall off that high, you're still picking bones." His mother, Adriana, nodded a couple of times. But the guy liked living like this. It's 100 times better than sitting in a stuffy office poking at buttons. Dangerous. So what? It's dangerous to sneeze in public these days. So what? Now I'm not going out. Of course not. You have a great education. Go to the bank, make a career. My mother wouldn't stop, and the children will go too. Will you go to the mountains? No wife, no kids either. Mom, why are you bothering again? Jacob sighed tiredly. Parent was in her repertoire. Talks about the dangers of paragliding and frivolous with the tourist business were repeated regularly, even if it brought decent money. With Jenna, Jacob met in a social network. He was bored on a winter evening. I scrolled through the newsfeed and came across the page Pretty Girls. Something about this brunette rather caught the young man's eye. Word of mouth. They went on a couple dates. The girl was impressed by Jacob's boldness and passion. He took her on several trips, even offered to take her paragliding, but she said no. Everything spun quickly, and in less than 6 months he proposed to her. Jacob was not embarrassed that the chosen one is spoiled, somewhat capricious, ambitious. But she always waited at home, cooked delicious salads and breast, did not criticize his hobbies. At work, Jacob's spouse did not kick out. Let her do what she likes, he told his mother. I earn enough for 2, but always beautiful and fresh. Jenna was more than happy with this arrangement. She was already dreaming of a full-service travel agency, a house somewhere by the sea, a column in some fashion magazine. Life went on at its own pace. Jacob and his wife lived together for a year and a half. His mother gave them her 2-room apartment, and she bought a small house in a village outside the city with her savings and moved in, but on the condition that soon there would be grandchildren. Jacob joked. Jenna rolled her eyes. Children were not in her plans for the next 100 years. But Adriana didn't need to know that. Instead of children, Jenna suggested her husband get a Spitz. Jacob was not against it and promised that after the next tour they would go together. Breed her and choose a puppy. A happy Jenna stayed home in anticipation, and Jacob and Kevin took the hikers to the mountains. Jacob was warned by everyone that the good his passion for flying would not end. But fate had other plans. The return trip in the mountains came in rainy weather. In late August, Kevin drove a minibus with a group, extremely careful to slow down on the serpentine corners. Jacob dozed in the passenger seat in the front, tired from the busy program and the early rise. It all happened in a split second when a dashing local in his car spun out of the turn and into the oncoming traffic. Kevin, you steered sideways to avoid hitting him. The car rolled over on its side and hit the passenger side of a pole and a concrete barrier. Jacob squeezed barely in half between the roof and the dashboard. The other passengers sprinkled like peas in the cabin, but thankfully no one else was so seriously hurt. They suffered abrasions, bruises, bumps, and a couple of broken fingers. Kevin dislocated his arm and suffered a concussion. Substantial Jacob was pulled out by emergency workers only 40 minutes later. Even rescuers don't travel fast in the rain in the mountains. He was taken to the nearest hospital, but there was no one there to take on the complicated operation. The man was urgently sent home to the capital of the region. There he could be given at least a chance to get back on his feet. The operation was successful. Jacob recovered quickly, but below the waist he was paralyzed. Without words, it was clear that extreme sports were over for life. Extreme and the job he loved. The minivan was beyond recovery. The firm was wiped out, with no transportation and no chief instructor. Jenna howled when she realized her beautiful, comfortable doll life was over. Her attitude toward her husband changed almost immediately. Whereas before she had seen him as a heroic pillar of leadership, a lover of danger, now only a source of trouble. Jacob experienced the crisis of mobility deprivation for a long time. He became depressed. 10 times a day he reviewed photos from trips, pulled the edge of the paraglider out of his backpack. The one in his hands sighed as he stared at one point. The atmosphere in the apartment was dragging. The doctor prescribed Jacob a set of exercises that were supposed to have an effect in time. But the man, disgusted by his helplessness, could not start doing them for a long time. Jenna avoided talking about the accident and the cow. You do him with your nose to his flaw at first. But as the irritation and exertion grew, she sometimes snapped. Jacob's fighting spirit only his mother tried to raise. She urged to believe in the best and not to give up therapeutic gymnastics. Once in a while, Kevin came to visit, but it was still difficult for the boy to talk about what he himself had lost. Time passed gradually. The former paraglider finally heeded the doctor's insistence and began to do exercises sometimes. Just in time, Jenna was baking at work and had a breakdown. It was a frosty morning in the village. A bunch of rowan trees were covered with frost. As if earrings decorated the bulb bush, a flock of sparrows hopped about in it with a cheerful beat. Frost covered the ground. Jenna opened the gate and wheeled the stroller onto the narrow path to the porch. Adriana sprinted out the door in downy shawls. Together, the two women pulled the stroller into the hay. "Will you be visiting long, Jenna?" asked the mother-in-law, touching invisibly and the dregs of her son's jacket. "Jacob for a long time. And I will go back to the city. I have to work," answered Jenna briefly. Adriana had no sooner opened her mouth than her daughter-in-law said a crumpled goodbye, slammed the door, and sped back to the cab to catch the train. The women stared at their son in confusion. Jacob was blacker than a cloud. He'd lost his favorite job, his ability to walk, and now his personal life hung in the balance. A couple days later, Jenna arrived again. The man was hopeful when he heard the gate bang outside his window. But Jacob was not happy yet. "I've always wanted a dog." Jenna, without even saying hello, put a carrier on the floor with Magton's cat. The frightened cat collapsed, shrunk against the back wall, and scowled hoarsely. Jenna walked away, not even bothering to say goodbye to Mactopus. Jacob began to feel a little better. The intelligent animal quickly became accustomed to the new conditions. The cat often slept on the lap of the owner, when Jacob sat by the window in a stroller or on the street, breathing fresh air. Sometimes Martin would get out of his seat and jump up and down to catch sparrows in the snow or hunt for an unknown speck in the dry grass. Jacob liked to watch the pet. It calmed him and drove away both boredom and longing for adventure. 2 months passed. It was the end of March. During that time, Jenna never came back for him. At first, the man called and wrote to her himself, but as time went on, his wife stopped picking up the phone and responded to social media with one-word answers. Jacob realized that he had been disposed of cynically and completely nonchalantly. His mother shook her head and often scolded Jenna. Especially, she was concerned about the suspended state left by the son of the apartment. "Good girl," Adriana lamented. "Mushenko fixed on my neck. She's living in the city in someone else's palace. Jacob, filing for divorce, I'm telling you. And everything will get better. Stop it." The man waved away our tribute to his mother, but he himself believed in his own words less and less. Apathy and longing ate Jacob. He was tormented by his own idleness because he could not do most of the housework. Walks were rare. Pulling the stroller down a couple porched steps to the ground was difficult. Once again, as Adriana settled in to do this, an elderly neighbor, Frank, peered over the fence at her. "And Adriana, what are you going to say that you have him on your hands?" In righteous indignation shouted the old man simply. "Hello, Frank," replied the woman. "So how else would you help them to scratch your tongue?" The gate is open. The neighbor deftly, not at all senile, ran to the wheelchair and helped down the steps to the path to the gate. At the same time, he asked both Jacob and his mother about what had happened. The man scratched the back of his head, shifting his knitted cap to the side. "And it is not clear whether he will stand up or not," complained Adriana. "I'll get up," Jacob muttered, feeling terribly embarrassed that 2 elderly people have to deal with him. "I got it." Frank threw up a finger. "Tomorrow I'll come and adapt it for your wheelchair. Then you're a grandson." He turned to Jacob. "Can you drive up and down? You better get back on your feet, though." "Okay." Jacob smiled a little and sighed. "Frank is not like my grandfather. God rest his soul, lazy." Adriana exclaimed. "He only knew how to make holes in his socks." The company laughed involuntarily. The neighbor soon left, having previously inspected the porch, and Adriana rolled the stroller along the sidewalk to the store. Jenna opened her laptop, taking a seat on the soft couch after work. Without looking, she waved at a text message from her husband with another question. The woman was interested in something else. Today, Michael, the director of the agency, finally paid attention to her and invited her to have coffee together at lunch. It was not for nothing that Jenna wore short skirts and spent several hours every day in the morning at the mirror. The purposefulness with which Jenna moved towards the goal, in the director's opinion, was worthy of applause. The girl went with the chief to a coffee shop, and in every possible way made it clear that she did not mind to continue communication in a more informal setting. Michael caught the hint, and at the end of lunch invited the pretty employee to dinner at the restaurant at the end of the week. Jenna cheered. "His suit is clearly not from a local seamstress," Jenna muttered under her breath as she looked at pictures of her boss on social media. "And a decent watch and cufflinks." Her eyes burned with admiration, but more with herself. From the moment Jenna had put her husband in the care of her mother-in-law. A month had passed, and in that time she realized that she was not living so badly. Work was suddenly no longer stressful. Cooking and cleaning became a rare worry. There was enough money for herself and still had time to shoot for clothing catalogs. Sometimes on the mental horizon slipped thoughts of divorce, but so far Jenna them from the metal. It was necessary to prepare the ground for a run-up, so as not to sit soft place in a puddle. How calculating. Cunning woman, Jenna understood this and therefore did not rush, although Jacob could have been served at any moment. But she'd think of something, and not much believed Jenna that kind, attached to her Jacob first will go to such a step. The pictures of the boss told Jenna what she wanted to know. Michael, in his 35 years, was the owner of a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and clearly had a passion for business things, foreign tailoring. The girl leaned back contentedly on the back of the sofa, scrolling through in her head options for outfits for a future date. A sick husband and the overall fact of a legal marriage did not slow Jenna down one bit. She didn't, as they call it, give a damn. X day came. Michael came to pick her up in his automobile. Jenna, from the moment of her work in the agency, tried not to spread much about her personal life. She took off the ring right after she sent Jacob to the country. And so in the car she was already flirting with her boss, who was 10 years older than her. The girl got what she wanted. In the morning, she woke up in the house of her lover. Michael brought her coffee and asked if the young lady wants to go to the skating rink. A couple days later, Jenna coquettishly agreed. Everything went according to plan. She told Mike what he wanted to hear, and he was slipping into an affair with his coworker. At work, they decided not to publicize the relationship, although it was difficult to hide something in the female staff. Soon the whole office was judging that the head had a young mistress. Jenna quietly laughed at the chicken's colleagues, but to reveal the secret was in no hurry. Michael was her target. The first day of April was too warm. It was as if the sun had reached the clear sky, and now it could make all the plants bloom in one day. There were even some sleepy flies in the air, stupefied by the sudden joy of plus 19 degrees. Fyodor Frank scratched his stubbled chin and took his visor, looking at the sun. Look how it's resolved. He nodded to Jacob. The man sat in his baby carriage on the path by the porch and kept route company with this neighbor while he remodeled the Bukovina into a sturdy, smooth slope. On Jacob's lap stomped Martin the cat. He Chally had paws Olympic at the owner. Now we'll put something here than there, and you'll ride like a racer, shouted an elderly neighbor, wielding a hammer. Yes, at least we do not violate traffic rules, smiled Jacob. He'd been a little more spirited lately. Maybe it was the weather, or maybe it was the fact that Jenna had practically abandoned him. Either way, clarity had come. Besides, Jacob had figured out a way to brighten up his hated idleness. He decided to write a book about his journey to the paragliding regimen. He found a blank notebook in his desk and began to jot down ideas. Jacob had never written any texts before, unless you counted the essays at school. However, his work went quite briskly. It was the abundant reading in the winter evenings. His mother had always favored books and had plenty of them at home. In the same winter evenings, he and his parents. Sometimes the two neighbors were in the kitchen, reading opposite each other, drinking herbal tea. At such moments, Jacob forgot that he was deprived of the ability to walk and became a little happier. Martin stretched his striped back, jumped to the ground, and hid behind the fence on some feline business. Done. Frank looked at the completed work and then turned to Jacob. Only son, try to drive in by yourself. Jacob, helping himself with his hands, began to carefully roll the stroller up the man-made at the ramp. A few minutes, and he with his vehicle without any help was already at the door to the house. Well, that's good, praised his neighbor. Grandpa came from the fence. Are you here? Let's go to lunch. I'm a schismatic poiled. Jacob turned his head at that ringing, like a crunch of thin ice on puddles. A voice from outside the wicket was waving its arms, a girl in a striped sweater. Her blonde curls were poking out from under her beret, and her bright blue eyes were visible even at a distance of a few meters. My granddaughter Lisa. Frank nodded imperceptibly. Jacob is in town for the weekend to study. At whom? The old one still didn't understand. Grandpa, come on, let's go, it's getting cold. All demanding, fuel foot. Guests behind the wicket. I'm coming, and why are you shouting? Good-naturedly waved her neighbor. I'll go. Adriana, say hello. See you again. The bolt under the roof is bad. It could do with a new one. Frank gathered the tools in a bag, waved to Jacob, and went out the gate to his granddaughter. The man thanked his neighbor for his hard work and suddenly realized that he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa, even though he hadn't even met her. April continued to bring warmth and wind. Rare gray-white piles of snow remained on the flower beds, and among them sprouts of the first spring flowers were sticking out of the ground. Jacob had not written Jenna for a long time, but was actively working on the book. The second notebook was already written. Carts. Can you get to the store yourself? Have you run out of salt? My mother yelled from the kitchen. And I can't move. The pies will burn and the soup will run away. The way to the grocery store was simple, a straight asphalt path of 250 meters long, the entrance to the premises without steps and a path without potholes. I can do it, Jacob said. He hastily put on his jacket, checked the change in his pocket, and rolled towards the wicket. Happy that he could help at last. It's time to go for a walk, his mother looked out of the window. The tires of the stroller rustled quietly on the already dry asphalt. Jacob moved slowly, looking at the village. In the gray and dull winter, it was depressing. But when the sun came out, the carved old skates played at once. Benches lived on the roofs. In front of the yards looked colored tires in the future flower beds. Nimble sparrows dragged grain from the chickens' feeders with ringing cuttings. Somewhere sheep were sick. The noise gladdened the heart, heralding the coming warmth of people and animals. Jacob got to the store without problems, bought salt, and rolled back. Almost back to the house, he heard the pitiful familiar meows from the roof of the neighbors. The man looked up. There was Martin sitting on the roof. Jacob had seen from the window that the cat used to climb up there on scaffolding. The neighbors were repairing something in the attic, or consisted almost all winter. But the repair was over, the scaffolding was removed, so as not to wait for the flower in front of the windows. And poor Kodov was trapped. There was no tree nearby, no roof lower than a suitable fence to climb down. The unfortunate Martin climbed into the attic to the neighbors. The day before fell asleep there, and in the morning they removed the scaffolding. And now frightened animals, seeing the owner, howled at the top of his voice. You're stuck, poor guy. How are we going to get you off? Here is a problem. Jacob looked questioningly at the pet. He tried knocking and calling the neighbors, but they weren't home. Apparently, his conscience did not allow him to call Jacob's mother. The feeling of helplessness and inferiority came again. The man looked hatefully at the stroller. If it weren't for her, he would have swung over the fence, climbed onto the roof by improvised means, and lowered the striped one to the ground. Poor thing. A familiar ringing voice snapped Jacob out of his musings. Frank's granddaughter was standing nearby, and once again she took to the roof. Yes, I wonder how to get it. Cautiously nodded Jacob. Well, you don't have much to think about, remarked Lisa. Well, we can't leave the mustache in the lurch. She put the bag with some food on her colleague's lap, rolled up the sleeves of her sweater, and without shyness, climbed right over the fence to the neighbors. The man only clapped his eyes in amazement. The vivacious girl aroused in him a feeling of real admiration. Lisa went around the house and found an old 3-step skirt by the barn. She shook the find happily, showing Jacob that the idea was there with 3. It turned out to be low enough to climb on the roof, but high enough to reach her hands to its edge and grab the cat's paw. The frightened Martin clutched at the girl's arm exhaustedly and looked around with bulging eyes. When the animal was on the ground, Lisa put it directly into the hands of its owner through the hole between the fence bars, and then carefully carried it with the 3 coups to the spot and swung the fence just as deftly in the opposite direction. There was no trace of the sudden intrusion. You had us worried. She knelt down in front of Jacob and affectionately patted the cat's fur. Thank you. I don't know how I would have gotten it myself. Jacob handed the girl a bag of groceries. My name is Lisa, by the way, introduced herself. Obviously you wouldn't, or he would have waited for someone else. The hearty passerby exchanged. The man smiled slightly. It's a good thing you were the passerby. Lisa wrinkled his nose. Let's get on a first-name basis. Why are we like old people? I'm just uncomfortable. I'm probably 10 years older than you. Jacob was embarrassed. We look the same age, Lisa remarked. What's the point then? To be polite. That's right, Jacob agreed. He rolled forward a little and stopped at his gate. Let me give you a hand. Lisa reached for the handle to open the door so Jacob could drive through freely. She stepped carelessly and tripped over the curb ledge. The man's reaction was lightning fast. He lunged forward and picked Lisa up with his arms. "Well, I'm clumsy." She cleverly hid her embarrassment behind a laugh. "It happens to everyone. It's okay." Jacob played along. "Lisa, come to our house with Frank. We'll have tea." "Of course we will." Grandpa was just saying something about the roof. Lisa remembered and nodded in agreement. She waved goodbye and went on her way. Jacob was happy as a child for some reason. He rolled the stroller onto the porch, opened the door to the house, where a hungry Martin stepped in. It was only then that he realized what had happened a moment ago. For the first time since the accident, the man felt his legs weakly as he pitched forward. They recoiled with a slight tingling in his knees. Jenna stretched out in bed, rays of sunlight falling through the window. The hands on the clock showed around 10 o'clock. Michael wasn't around. He always left early. Apart from weekends, work was the most important lady in the life of the director of a real estate agency. Jenna was in no hurry to get to work. She was already thinking of quitting. She was annoyed that Mike didn't suggest it. After all, they were already in a relationship, and he could also allocate some money for her. When coworkers called with questions about being ready to show apartments to buyers, Jenna always found waving goodbye. Sick with fatigue, business, an urgent trip. If he didn't offer, she had to quit, Jenna decided, waiting for the machine to make coffee. She liked it much better at Mike's house than at her husband's apartment. Quiet, spacious, and every little thing is taken care of by a robot vacuum cleaner. Dishes are washed by a machine, and everything else is automated to the max. It's also perfectly clean. Once a week, Michael ordered a total house cleaning from a cleaning company. He couldn't stand dirt and piles of junk, and he also preferred dry cleaning, where all the things were given to the hanger. They're already perfectly laid out. Unlike Jacob, he was always on parade, not lugging around all sorts of places with tourists, looking after himself. All of which Jenna clung to. That's how she'd always wanted to live. That was the level she aspired to. She had already realized the first part of the plan by becoming the boss's mistress. The next part was to gradually accustom him to herself, in his personal space. Jenna was already looking predatorily at Michael's second car, figuring out whether she needed a fur coat for the next season and when it was better to take a vacation. And there, when everything will be already grabbed, she will quietly divorce Jacob. The girl's plans were Napoleonic. At work, began to suspect a connection with the boss. When Michael gave her a ride a couple of times. On questions, Jenna did not answer, but only joked and rolled his eyes. When it all comes out, she won't care. In the meantime, it was better to keep the affair a secret. At least not to be jinxed, that's for sure. Jenna had a leisurely breakfast, took a shower, put on her makeup, hailed a cab, and went to leave in full dress. She was sure it would encourage Michael to take more decisive action. Like offering to move in with him at last. To work, like a holiday. The managers greeted, raising an eyebrow in mild amazement. Not to work anymore, Jenna informed her, placing the application form in front of her. So you're going freelance, or you've already found a better place. The manager put the application in a folder. You could say that, Jenna smiled enigmatically. She didn't bother with the detentions at her former job, hastily picked up her things from her desk, dryly bade her coworkers farewell, and plowed on out the door. It was amazing the determination that woke up in Jenna at the prospect of a relationship with a wealthy man, and how she dreaded being left in poverty with an invalid husband. Jenna went home, dropped off her things from work. Then you called girlfriend Jenna, and they went shopping together. Enterprising girl decided that a new set of beautiful lingerie will soften the news of her dismissal for Michael. In the evening, Jenna met her lover in parade at his house and informed about her decision. The man was not naively surprised. She had quit. But why? You didn't seem to be busy, and you were always paid on time. Why, Mike? Jenna coquettishly sat on his lap to spend more time with you. After all, a beautiful, satisfied woman, it's better for a tired woman to promise that yes. Well, what makes you think you were? Michael was genuinely perplexed. I felt that way. Jenna didn't like her lover's reaction. An awkward silence ensued. The first to break it was the man. I wanted to talk to you about the May holidays. I thought maybe we could go to the mountains, rent a remote, cozy house. How's that sound? The word mountains almost made Jenna squirm. She was fed up with the mountains in her life with Jacob, and therefore, quickly catching her face, the girl with the most innocent voice began to dissuade Michael from his decision. Mike, in the mountains, maybe it's still cold. I want to get warm already, you know? She played with her eyebrows a little. Maybe we'll spend a little more and fly to a place where it's already warm enough. Lying on the beach is better than kicking mud in the woods. Don't you think? But we can do that. The man agreed and reached for his laptop to look for a suitable proposal. Jenna realized she had won. Jacob was waiting for a tea party with the neighbors for some important event. He was also very excited about the return of the weakness in his legs. Had he risen from the ashes of hope to fly again? At least to walk with his feet on the grass. Jacob longed for the paragliding, the mountains of his active life. He had buried it all when he got into the baby carriage. But now there was a glimpse of a chance in the darkness that not all was lost. The man found a folder with the doctor's prescriptions, studied the instructions on therapeutic physical training, and began to exercise slowly. Adriana even let out a quiet tear of joy as she watched her son practicing. She tried to support him in everything, but not to push or nag him. She understood what Jacob had to go through physically and mentally, and that's why she fell behind with questions about Jenna, about motivation, about the apartment. Time will come on its own. Everything will work out as it needs to. The woman sometimes told herself in the evenings 100 nodding visual spokes to each other. At a warm 12 o'clock, mid-April, on the doorstep of the house appeared Frank with Lisa Vida. The hostess was to invite them into the house, but the brisk grandfather waved them away and said that first work, then and race. So he inspected the edge of the roof and got down to business. Adriana fussed around at first, but then waved goodbye and went away to crack the dumplings. Jacob, Vita's tears settled on the front porch area in case a kind neighbor needed to lend tools. "That's a cool grandpa you have," whispered Jacob in the ear of the girl. "I don't remember my grandfathers. I was little when they were gone. I guess I was lucky." Lisa nodded and smiled as she looked at her relative, diligently tapping his hammer. "And yes, you're right, my grandpa is a good man. An example for the whole family. In hard work and optimism it is noticeable," agreed Jacob. "Do you look like him?" Lisa slyly tilted her head and looked down at Jacob. She rested her hand on the wheel of the stroller. What was her wait-and-see attitude? She looked at the guy. Jacob looked embarrassed for some reason. Her heart was pounding like crazy. This simple and perky student evoked in him a feeling similar to the first flight under the dome of a paraglider. "You are light, witty, and kind," Jacob said in one breath. Lisa as if experienced all the words in turn, and then nodded affirmatively, slightly pictorially, for some reason playfully patted Jacob on the shoulder and laughed. An hour later, vanilla and cherries wafted from the open kitchen window. Adriana, peeking out of the door, called out to everyone, "Yes, throw in that roof, Frank. And you guys, come and eat the dumplings while they're hot." Jacob and Lisa were chatting on a bench near the porch and didn't even hear the hostess' response at once. "What do you want, Adriana, to fill your stomach?" "Maybe people are in the middle of work," replied the elderly neighbor, wielding the flat auctions. "Grandpa, don't grumble. Let's go. It'll get cold." Lisa gently scolded him. She grabbed the handles of the stroller with Jacob and boldly rolled it down the porch to the entrance. He protested. "Why don't you do it? I'll do it myself. Let me take care of you already." Lisa chucked but did not stop. When the two of them moved to wash their hands in the back of the house, Adriana slowed down late for the youth, Frank, at the threshold and whispered, "There's a flower blooming." "I don't see it," he muttered good-naturedly in reply. "Do you take me for an old fool?" The neighbors smiled understandingly. When the whole company gathered around the table, the plates were already steaming with freshly boiled homemade dumplings with garden cherries, strong tea, and sour cream. So thick that you could stand a spoon in it. A martin was burning under the table. The cat poked its nose on one lap and then the other, asking for treats. Toward the end, Lisa quietly gave the mustachioed Strike and one dumpling. Martin instantly dragged the prey outside with a proud look. "Who is it that feeds the cat from the table?" Adriana was indignant. "Adriana, send them for a walk as punishment," winked Grandfather Frank. Lissa and Jacob looked at each other at the same time. That's right, the landlady played along. "The weather is nice. There's nothing to sit out. Go and pick a bunch of flowers." The goose meadow was already showing. I crossed, in short, the flag behind the village by the pond. A whole bed came out, and the road to Sokol just Jacob will pass. After the meal, Lissa and Jacob, sensing a trick but not seeing it, were outside the gate of the house and moved leisurely along the path. "Can't you walk at all?" Suddenly Lissa asked, and then she realized she was sorry. "I shouldn't have asked that. It's inappropriate." "It's okay," Jacob answered very calmly. "The doctors say there's a chance, but I can't do it at all yet." At the same time, he remembered the tingling in his knees. Recently, and his exercises began to do gymnastics to restore sensitivity. But sometimes apathy eats away, and you want to give up and accept everything, he shared with the girl. "They say that human possibilities are limitless, and it's all about desire." Lissa looked at the sun and then at Jacob. "And here I am studying to be a marketer, but I want to work with people en masse. I feel it, but I don't know in what way." "That's great," Jacob praised her. "In time, you will surely realize where the pole, and you will eventually get back on your feet." "I know that," Lissa smiled and discreetly touched the man's shoulder. Jacob felt the warmth of her hand even through the thick sweatshirt. It remained there, even when the hand itself was gone. They talked and talked about plans and tourists, about the shortcomings of student dormitories and evil teachers, about the countryside and the city, about the joys of life and far-fetched problems. For the first time in many months since the accident, Jacob felt alive. If his legs obeyed, he would have run, spreading his arms out to the sides and putting his face to the wind. The stroller hit a rock. Alexei threw as the wheel shuddered that Lissa had stopped. Did it hurt? No, he lifted his gaze full on her, perplexed for a secret joy. "I think I can feel my leg." It was from behind the rounded eyes and squatted down beside her. She grabbed her leg just above the knee and gave it a little squeeze. The skin recoiled Jacob, barely noticeable by an unpleasantly dull pain, as if through a pillow. Barely, but withdrawn. Jacob grabbed Lissa's hand. "I can feel her," he whispered. "I can feel her for sure." Lissa jumped up and laughed, then rushed to hug Jacob, a tear streaming down her cheek, either from joy or happiness, or maybe all at once. Jenna was dozing in a chair with headphones on. Michael was sitting next to her, looking at something on his laptop. Clouds flickered in the window, the plane carrying them home from their vacation. Jenna was content and mostly to herself. Abroad, she persuaded her lover to buy some expensive gifts. The arguments were ironclad. "I really need it, and it will be more expensive for us anyway." Michael didn't argue, but he didn't have the joy of gift-giving on his face. Although Jenna was diligently broadcasting to the whole store, shining and kissing the man on the cheek. Mike himself never started a conversation about moving, despite the fact that the girl did not work, but occasionally hinted at the need to find a new source of income. Jenna sincerely did not understand these hints, although he pretended to be a fool. In the end, she moved her things to Mike's house and appeared in the apartment only occasionally. As the couple rested after the morning flight and drank coffee on the balcony, Jenna glanced again at Michael's second car. "I was thinking I might drive." "Where to?" Michael looked at her questioningly, carrying his gaze away from his phone screen and work correspondence. "To the store to run errands for fitness." Jenna began to curl her toes and then in heels. "So in sneakers or boots?" "It's more comfortable." Michael shrugged. "And it's easier than buying and registering a car." "Why buy a car when you already have one?" Jenna nodded shrewdly at the blue foreign car. Michael followed her gaze, wished with his lips, and after a pause said, "The car isn't running. I'm waiting on a new engine for it. Then I was planning to repair it, sell it, and invest the money in a project. And by the way, you don't even have driving experience." "Experience can be gained," Jenna said. "You can always sell it." I like her so much. I could be your sober driver after all. Jenna's nagging skills were first-rate. While still studying to be a translator, She'd realized that it was easier to ask for something than to make an effort and strain herself. And awkwardness can always be smoothed over later with feminine methods. So Michael irritably pressed the bridge of his nose with his fingers. "I don't drink, and if I do, I can call a cab. The car's not running. No one can drive it. When the right model engine comes along, I'll order it. But until then, you better buy yourself a pair of good sneakers." The man stood up, took the mug with the rest of the coffee, and went into the room, signaling that the subject was closed. Jenna hid resentfully. She found the recommendation offensive, considering that pretty shoes and stiletto boots had helped initially win her lover. She wasn't rejected directly, but rather harshly, by the way-remembered patient, kind Jacob, who, even though he could not give her a car, but never refused in other whims more modest. A few days passed. Jenna decided not to focus on Mike's refusal and try to talk about the car again. A little later, she pretended to be a diligent housewife, cooked a nice dinner, bought some good wine. The evening passed in a cozy atmosphere, until Mike suggested watching a new movie. The screen showed the serene life of a family with 2 children. The father was playing frisbee with his son. The mother was teaching her daughter to play the piano. A golden retriever snoozed on the mat. "I always wanted a big family too," Michael said suddenly, "to have a son and a daughter. I started this whole business so that the children would be well off and not need anything." Jenna, who was lying on his lap, was slightly shaken, but she did not show it. So here he is, the perfect image of a spouse for Michael, which he agrees to provide without question. An educated, working mom. Well, no, she's not going to be one. Wasting her youthful beauty on children. When there are so many countries, so many cool options for leisure and self-improvement. I feel sick. The girl jumped up and went into the kitchen, and suddenly it was already in her head. A terrific idea, and how to get all the benefits of a lover and not cheat on herself. She opened a bottle of mineral water, poured the falling liquid into a glass, and drank contentedly. The plan was simple and ingenious. Lissa only came to the village on weekends, because the rest of the time she had to attend classes. Jacob missed the girl, but tried to keep himself busy in her absence. He was especially reluctant to write a book and do leg exercises. Lissa supported his zeal in both endeavors. In the first 2 weeks of exercise, Jacob was able to wiggle his toes. In another week, he was able to tilt his foot slightly and tense his lower leg. With each new achievement of motivation, it was as if his strength for life was returning. May came, birds sang, tulips bloomed. The bushes and greenery had fresh foliage. Adriana bathed the flower beds loose, the ground cleaned up. Striking branches from a birch tree, there also bowed red, yellow, white buds of tulips. Next to them, crocuses crawled out in a row. At the very curb, blue caps of balloon buds. Martin was hanging around. The cat galloped, tail up, jumped on the brick walls, hunted for soldier beetles that flew out from under the slate. Jacob sat in the stroller by the porch and, covering his eyelids, basked in the sun. Suddenly, someone's hands were on his eyelids. What a thing to do, he stretched out. More playful than annoying. "Lissa, you thought I didn't recognize you." A giggle was heard, then chuckles. "Adriana, I've been sneaking around like a gorilla. I talked Aunt Veja out of it. What's he up to?" Lissa indignantly began tickling Jacob by the ribs. He immediately laughed, shaking off the remnants of his injury. Adriana laughed too, watching the children fool around. When the fun subsided, everyone went into the house to eat cold okroshka and drink jam, dried fruit. At the table, Jacob discreetly put his hand on Lisa's arm. When his mother was busy at the stove, putting on jam, Lisa looked at him embarrassed, but did not take her hand away. Instead, she stroked his little finger with her thumb. How this embarrassment did not take with her usual perky nature. Jacob himself felt like a teenager, as if he were back in college and timidly seeking first dates with cute classmates. Adriana saw what was going on at the table, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she remembered something urgent to do outside, grabbed her head, and rushed out of the kitchen. "Lisa, I have to talk to you." Jacob started when he realized that they were alone. The girl nodded and turned to him with her whole body on the stool. "About what?" about what's going on between us. Jacob sighed and took her hand again. I like you a lot. I realize that we're not just friends anymore. You've become important to me, and you're helping me not to give up. I realize you don't need Kalenka, but I'm married anyway. Yes, she left me as a useless thing here. But officially, I'm still married. Instead of answering, Lisa hugged him tightly around the neck. Of course I need you for anything. And I'm sure you'll get out of that damn chair very soon, she whispered in his ear. Jacob's insides warmed. He hugged Lisa in return, at the same time feeling the distinct tingling in his knees again as he pulled her to him. You're an amazing person, with a good heart and a beautiful dream. Lisa looked into his eyes. And I care first and foremost about how you feel, not what the papers say. The man smiled and hugged the girl again. Let's get you back on your feet. Lisa kissed him on the cheek, and then everything will work itself out. Jenna got out of her seat and desperately ran to the restroom. At Michael's surprised look, they had just sat down to breakfast Saturday morning. They planned to drive to a business meeting and go for a walk afterward. Are you okay? Michael knocked excitedly on the bathroom door. Just dizzy all of a sudden from the nausea, Jenna answered, carefully imitating the appropriate sounds. She made some more noise with the drain of the cistern faucet by splashing water on her face and stepped out into the hallway. Michael looked at her with a mixture of joy and anticipation. Are you pregnant? He blurted out. Oh, I don't know. I'll take a test today. Jenna clutched her forehead. What was there to do? Michael picked her up, sat her down on the living room couch, began swiping at her with a folder. It's clear you're sick of food and your face is all bloomed. And if that's the case, you'll be glad you did. Jenna pulled the most naively righteous expression on her face that she could portray. Are you kidding? Of course I am. Michael knelt down in front of her. I've wanted kids for so long, and I applied for a second degree. What's to take back now? Jenna changed from righteousness to brokenness. Why take it back? You're a distance learner. I'm paying for your education, so you can work later when the baby grows up, Mike assured her. Yeah, so off to work she went. Of course, Jenna mentally braced herself again. Okay, I'll go to the doctor tomorrow and find out everything. She sighed, hugging the jubilant Mike. How to fake a pregnancy until the belly appeared. Jenna thought through the nausea, mood swings, dizziness, and bouts of appetite. Didn't seem to be a problem. A doctor she knew, for a fee, could write certificates of confinement for the first time. But then Jenna was going to stage a miscarriage. The only problem was how to divorce Jacob discreetly, but stay living in his apartment. After all, the ambitious woman had plans to marry Mike, but he thought that the apartment belongs to Jenna. He never let her move in with him, although he wouldn't kick his baby mama out on the street. Here was the puzzle, Jenna thought slyly. The certificate was soon obtained. Michael was jubilant, developed a flurry of activity, and was already choosing a name for the future child. He immediately moved his wife permanently to his place. In the evenings, he looked through strollers and cribs, endlessly discussed everything related to children. The girl nodded and herself tried to improve the moment to file for divorce. It remained to quietly finish the story with Jacob, so that it was possible to go to the registry office with Mike unhindered. There wasn't much time left, and every day counted. In the meantime, Jenna was taking full advantage of her position. She was capricious, demanding a personal masseur, demanding a stamp. But in a pickle in the middle of the night, she asked to buy that ring and that purse. Michael performed them all like silk, even made a separate bank card for Jenna. After all, the wishes of a mother and her child were a man's law. And as much as he liked Jenna, he liked her in spite of her temper. Are you sure? Lisa looked at Jacob very carefully. Maybe we should wait. I don't want anything to happen. Yes, I'm sure. Jacob leaned on the armrests of the chair with all his might. It's about time. We should try it. Both were in the living room of the house, on the carpet. Lisa stood next to the stroller, holding out her arms to the man. Jacob began to carefully stand up. At first on his elbows, his legs obeyed, but somehow inarticulate, in thirds with a force that was habitually healthy. Knees, bending as if presented by the weight of hinges, long since opened the door. Heavy. Lisa was eagerly following the boy. It's harder than learning to walk as a child. Jacob wanted to. He put one foot down on the floor first, felt the shaggy pile of the carpet, again like through a pillow, then put the other foot down. Had to make up his mind and let go of the armrests of the stroller. Doubt swamped the mind. Jacob closed his eyes and remembered his first paragliding flight. All around the clouds that affectionately hugged the slopes, overgrown with pine and fir trees. Jacob shook the long-forgotten sensations. He felt Lisa's support and tried to step. The leg was like a stranger's, stricken with a cramp, but nevertheless slowly moved forward. The movement a step through the force, another step. The back remembered what it was like to be straight. Jacob scrutinized his legs, scarred from his many extreme activities, and it was as if he was reliving them all a second time, standing here on the soft carpet in his own home. The man was able to take a dozen feeble steps with Lisa's support and, tired, sat back in the chair. "You're doing an incredible job." The girl hugged him. "Let's go to the doctor. Let them record your progress. Maybe he'll make some recommendations to speed up the process." The idea is good, but how to get to the city and the hospital? Jacob nodded sadly at the still-needed wheelchair. "Grandpa has a car. He'll take you there." Lisa suggested. "No, you what?" Jacob waved his hands. "Frank has already done so much for me. I can't. My conscience won't allow it." "Oh, stop it." Lisa threw at him. "And that grandfather doesn't understand anything." "Yes, old stupid." Jacob was embarrassed. "But only if he agrees, don't insist." He grabbed the palm of Lisa, who was about to go to the grandfather. The old car evenly, body motored over the bumps of the rustic country road. Frank spun the steering wheel and talked about the years of dashing youth and work on the collective farm. Jacob sat on the back seat and held a folder with his documents. The stroller ran behind him in the trunk. Lisa was chortling in the front passenger seat listening to her grandfather's stories. It all happened simply, quickly, and completely easy. She asked for it, and off they went. Good thing at least Jacob had time to call the hospital and find out if the surgeon was seeing him today. "Well, my little dove, you know how to surprise," admired the Dr. Jacob after the examination. "At this rate, in 6 months you will be able to run." True, Lisa, who was also present in the office, could not refrain from asking. "Of course, this is the first time I have seen patients recover so quickly from such injuries. It's a miracle, although in scientific circles it is not customary to say so." The doctor pointed expressively at Jacob's medical records, then at his feet. "Keep practicing. Develop the previous mobility in all parts of the leg. I recommend that you try walking with support." Jacob drove back almost elated. Confidence was growing in him, and he was sure that very soon he would be able not only to walk, but also to fly again. In such a mood, the man was caught by a sudden phone call. "Jacob, hello." Jenna's voice sounded in the receiver. "I won't be long. Can you talk? Hi. What's wrong?" A lump rose in my chest, and together with the living memories that almost ceased to bother me. "I filed for divorce," Jenna informed him briefly. "I guess there's no need to explain what and why. You're a big, smart boy. You'll figure it out." "Yes, I will," he confirmed his ex-wife's words. "Good. I hope it's done quickly. I'll be vacating the apartment in a couple weeks." While Jenna hung up the phone, Lisa heard the conversation. Unlike Glukov, your Frank. She turned to Jacob and whispered, "It's for the best. Don't be upset. You said yourself that she was just a formality." "You're right, aren't you?" The man nodded. "Still, I loved that man once. The key word is once." Jenna fairly acted on the armrest of the chair with her fingers. Everything was going according to plan. Jacob had agreed to the divorce, even though he didn't have much of a choice. Michael adored her. The pregnancy legend was confirmed by a certificate. There's a personal bank card with enough money for whatever she wants at any time of day. Awesome. What more could one want? Jenna felt like a queen, in front of whom all those she managed to use in pursuit of the perfect life danced in formation. So that left the girl, staring wistfully at the ceiling, putting a cherry in her mouth from the platter on the table. Left with a car and an official marriage. She replied. Sama herself spit out the pit from the fruit. That's what we'll do today. In the evening, when Michael returned home, the first thing he did was to hug Jenna and stroke her stomach. The girl expected she fed her lover a delicious dinner, poured him wine, and gave him a massage. When Michael got angry, Jenna went on the attack. Mike, I really want the baby to be born in a legal marriage. I grew up in a full family myself, and I find fatherlessness unacceptable. I agreed to that too. Man, I wanted to discuss this issue too. Jenna waiting froze, like a hound who waits for the command to corner the bird for the master. Instead of answering, Michael reached into the pocket of his work case, pulled out a box, and placed it in Jenna's hands. I wanted to make it pretty, but since we're talking, why not? Michael pulled his mistress to him, kissed her forehead. I'll do it. Jenna threw her arms around Michael. At the same time, they marveled at the size of the stone in the ring. They decided to get married in 3 months. By the time of the wedding, Jenna was already planning to get rid of her ex-husband. After the ceremony and banquet, it'll be a week before she fakes a miscarriage. The trap slammed shut in time and securely. We'll have to eat a couple of pounds for the good life, smirked the girl, mentally continuing to listen to Michael's musings about the wedding. Surprisingly, he was almost not interested in Jenna's personal life. Before meeting him, she didn't even remember whether she had told him about the divorce proceedings or not. Apparently, nonsense like an ex-husband was so insignificant to Michael that he preferred not to spend any time or attention on it. Jenna realized it was a good time to push harder. Mike, when the big belly grows, it will be hard for me to go to the hospital and generally go about my business. The girl put her head on her lover's chest. Maybe you're thinking about a car. And so I would take a couple of lessons with an instructor to refresh my knowledge in my head. What do you say? Of course, Jenna's lying. She didn't have anything to refresh her mind because she got her license through a long shot. And it's clear she didn't get it for free. The young lady was not afraid of the road or traffic police or other drivers. Prestige in the possession of his foreign car stuck. Eyes. Possible in your words, and there is a sense. Michael thought for a moment. He put his hands behind his head and set more on his forehead. Jenna held her breath and peered expectantly from under her lashes. Good. Finally, he announced his decision. Only we'll do things differently. I'll sell this car and buy you something more feminine, okay? Sure. Thanks, honey. Jenna let out a squeal of pleasure and started hugging Michael again. Hugging my lover. At the same time, I was thinking about getting a new watch or bracelet in honor of important events like marriage and a car. You should go into town and get that jerk stuff out of your apartment. You've been divorced for 2 weeks now, and you're still at it. Outside, the window smelled of lilacs. June was buzzing with young grass and summer rains. The sun was lavishing light on the earth. Mom, I don't feel confident enough to drive myself yet, Jacob answered, opening a jar of sour cream. Over the past month, the man has made noticeable progress in developing his legs. He could already stand up and sit down with support. He could walk slowly around the house with crutches, without support, walked along the wall, and tried to keep his back straight. Call Lisa, she's in town anyway. Every Monday will help you, the woman advised. Sits down opposite at the table. I don't feel comfortable. She's already here with me all the time, like a caregiver, Jacob mumbled. Adriana put her hand on his palm. Son, that girl loves you. Unlike the town mom, you didn't blow her off. Girls like that are worth their weight in gold. The boy looked at his mother in agreement. Jacob himself realized that between him and Lisa long ago everything and everyone understood. So why did he hesitate and wait for something? Maybe the notorious stroller still does not allow him to step forward, even mentally. A lot of people don't get it right the first time, but that doesn't mean you can't try again. His mother walked around the table, stroked the back of his head, and went out into the room. Jacob ate his soup, then pulled out his cell phone and dialed Lisa's number. Hi. I was wondering if you'd go into town with me any day soon and check out the apartment. The guy spoke, nervously twirling his spoon. For some reason, every interaction with Lisa gave him a pleasant shiver. Jacob was shy, lost, everything spilled out of his hands. Words were jumbled. He couldn't remember anything like that with any girlfriend. Did it mean what his mother had hinted at? Jacob didn't know. But every time he waited for Lisa from school, he got stronger, and the joy of the meeting was brighter and brighter. "Sure, let's go." The girl agreed. "Are you sure you can already without the stroller?" "I have to," Jacob assured her. "Good," Lisa's face warmed. "Voice then be ready Saturday." Very much looking forward to it, Jacob hit the cancel button. It was too soon, and he was so eager to add a whole one. But again, that childish indignation ruined everything. How surprised he would be to find out that Lisa was feeling the same way. Standing in the middle of the institute with the phone in her hand. "I allowed Walk to come with you," Lisa blurted out when they were already sitting on the train. Jacob revived in surprise. For the first time, he decided not to take a wheelchair with him and to do with crutches only. Why? Instead of answering, Lisa climbed under his arm and tucked her nose into his side so that Jacob could only see the top of her head. He smiled into the measured, sleepy emptiness of the carriage, closed his eyes, and hugged Lisa tighter. The apartment Jacob hadn't been in almost 6 months was echoed by the familiar turn of the key and the smell. The man breathed it in, standing on the threshold as if hesitant to enter. The smell reminded him again of the time of tourism and flying. There in the closet on the balcony in a case lies his paraglider, next to it in a backpacked equipment, tracker, boots, camera for shooting from height helmet. Jenna's stuff wasn't in the apartment. Contrary to Adriana's fears, she took every last jar. And judging by the footprints in the bathroom, it's recent. They didn't even bother to clean up. Jacob and Lisa ordered a snack from the delivery service and began to clean up. The man tried to do everything himself, but from time to time he still stopped and rested. Lisa quickly put the bathroom in order, washed dusty dishes in the closet, vacuumed the carpets, and wiped the mirrors. "You're doing a great job." She praised Jacob when they sat down in the evening on the living room sofa with sandwiches and cups of tea. The doctor was right. "You're getting better." "I'm too well motivated," Jacob joked, glancing at Lisa. She tossed and dropped the sausage in her lap. "I'm very grateful for everything you do for me." Jacob took a piece from his sandwich and transferred it to the girl's sandwich. "But the sky really beckons me. I want to fly again and do what I love. I just don't know how." Lisa Moraviova forehead. She knew what had happened to Jacob's partner and to their touring car. "Aren't you afraid of hurting your back again?" "Honestly, I'd go through the whole thing again." Jacob looked at her defiantly. "Why?" Lisa, perplexed, still bowed her head. "To get to know you again." Jacob leaned over, quickly pulled the girl to him and kissed her. Jenna diligently flew around the world to the cafe. At lunch with her friend, they had just toured a dozen bridal salons, looking for a dress for her and her bridesmaids. It was the end of August. All the wedding preparations were almost finished. A restaurant had been chosen, a photographer, a designer, a host hired. Defined the menu and sent invitations to guests. "Aren't you tired of belly itching while sipping cold juice from a tube?" asked Jenna. "Tired. What can you do? It's a beautiful life. You want it." Jenna grinned. "Mike, you've got a tough guy. I'll give you that," dreamed the girlfriend. "Handsome, with money, established. He's got it all. Not like your former test pilot." "You don't say," nodded Jenna, pushing her plate away. "A man in his 30s, and he's been hiking the mountains." "Well, they're divorced now. Forgotten like a bad dream." My girlfriends started laughing. "How far along are you?" Jenna nodded at her stomach and grinned. "The 5th month I'm eating like crazy. I've already gained 3 pounds. How can I lose it all?" "It's okay, 1 more week and you'll have a tragic drama," Jenna grinned. "Where do you get the paperwork for Mike to believe?" whispered Jenna. "My girlfriend makes them for me." Jenna replied in her tone. "I have to go to her today, by the way. Mike wants the ultrasound results. Paul wants to know the baby." She voiced again, laughed. "Genius you are, a woman," Jenka admired her friend. "I did not dare to do such a thing. If you want to live, know how to spin." Jenna shrugged her shoulders. The girls paid for lunch and said goodbye. Jenna sat behind the wheel of a brand new red sedan, and Jenna stayed behind to wait for a cab. Head. Jenna was already at the wedding ceremony, figuring out how her dress would sit on her and from what angle it would be better to take pictures. She ordered an exclusive bouquet of terry pale lilac roses from the florists and anticipated her image with him in such dreams. The girl pulled into the clinic's parking lot. A small documentary formalities. And Jenna was already sitting in the office of gynecologist Katya. A nice lunch was interrupted by a phone call. "Joy, where is it?" Michael greeted her on the phone. "I'm at my doctor's office. As soon as I'm free, I'll pick up my glasses and go straight home," harked Jenna. "Oh, great. I thought I'd make risotto. I asked if you could have it, because there's wine in the recipe." Michael asked anxiously. "Okay, I'll be sure to ask." For now, Jenna jabbed her finger at the screen and slipped her smartphone into her purse. Worried about my pregnancy, she hid her nose and made a quotation mark in the air with her fingers. "Well, what are you?" Katerina nodded at the memo to expectant mothers on the wall of the office. "Would get pregnant really already the right age?" "Yes, and the man you all have. As they say, would have hired a nanny, and you and the child, and the status. And you're not the boss." Jenna looked like she took a bite out of an unripe persimmon. "Are you kidding me? I'm already thinking about how I'm going to lose the whole thing. And if the pot belly did grow, it'd be stretch marks, swelling, and a C-section. God forbid. Maybe someday, but not now. It's up to you, but I would be worried about such prospects," grinned Katerina. "So there you needed an ultrasound at 16 weeks. I'll look it up. Who have I had recently with the same dates?" She sat down at the machine, then back at the computer, and began to look for suitable data. A couple of manipulations to change the date and last name. Soon the required documents were lying in front of Jenna. The girl gratefully slipped them into her bag, and to Katya moved an envelope. "At the wedding, decided already, what to go in?" she asked. "Yes, looked at a couple of options," the doctor replied. "Your own we are hot, on them and will spend." General laughter broke out in the office. Home Jenna drove home in a wonderful mood. She picked up the wedding glasses from the salon, carefully packed them in a box, and was pulling into the parking lot of Michael's house by 7:00 p.m. "That's odd. I thought he wanted to make risotto." Jenna turned up her nose, kicking off her shoes in the hallway. The house smelled ordinary instead of Italian. And it was too quiet, no sound of pots rattling or knives clattering from the kitchen. The girl went into the hall and saw Michael sitting in a chair. "You decided to order food from the restaurant?" Jenna tried to make a joke. Michael looked at her glumly. "Give me the car keys." "Why?" Jenna, perplexed, raised an eyebrow some more. Michael sucked in air with his nose, exhaled. "You give me the car keys now, then you go to the second floor, gather all your things, call a cab, and Katusha the hell out of my life." His voice boomed so loud it echoed in every corner of the house. Jenna cowardly squirmed, her eyes shielding her. She tried to open her mouth. "Mike, what's wrong?" The man stood up and roughly snatched her keys from her, shaved the coma off her shaking hands and handed her his. "Doctor, what do I care if she is stripped of her medical practice, or better yet, sued?" Looking into his eyes, Michael said. Jenna collapsed on the carpet between the chairs. Reality rang in her ears, hailing down on her unprotected skin and burning her with the pain of red-hot needles. Michael squatted down beside her, took her chin, and turned her to face him. He'd like to get himself a warmer place at my expense. And with a mop they went out for not disconnecting the call. I, kak nudobno poluchulos, da takaya glupost. To think, Jenna burst into tears of shame. But Michael didn't care anymore. Jenna remembers that night like a blur. She had stuffed things into suitcases and bags in 15 minutes, not even trying to apologize, even though it was pointless. The offended director of the real estate agency made caustic jokes about her, and then he poured wine into his glass and drank in silence, watching the ex-lover frantically packing her belongings. Before he left, he took away all her expensive gifts of watches, jewelry, and brand-name clothes. Jenna walked out of the gate with exactly the same set of things she had come here with a few months ago. "Are you ready?" Lisa stood in front of Jacob and held his hands tightly. "Ready, my captain." The man mockingly put a hand to his helmeted head. In front of them a locker room or a takeoff pad for paragliding lawyers, and behind it a thunderclap made the fall mountain scenery incredibly beautiful. The slopes were drowned in all the colors of the solar palette from ochre to pogranitsa. Bushes of wild sea buckthorn, beads of miniature berries shone. The blackthorn did not argue with it, nor did the cherry leaf. Gray-brown stones, as if old wise men, soothed the ride of autumn colors. It was the end of September. On the slope away from the site, the last emerald lizards basked and rare butterflies flitted about. When you walk to the landing, don't leave your feet abruptly. About the signal, we'll know it's time. The plan did not drag. At a gust admonished Jacob Kevin, correcting on that straps that grew somewhere only from behind the cradle. William, the instructor who had once trained Jacob, stuck out for the passenger. He won't be flying until next season. I'm in charge for now. All right, stay out of it. Kevin put his palms up and stepped away from the runway with Lisa. Let's go down the slope, and there I'm picked up. William Jacob commanded. But let's go. Jacob gripped the safety harness tighter and rushed forward. Lisa ducked as the foam was caught by the wind and began to rise upward, swaying weakly. Kevin put his palm to his forehead, shielding his eyes from the sun, and dashed his strength approvingly. And good, let's go. Worried about him all the same. Lisa nervously lost her fingers from each other. You drop it. Kevin patted her shoulder. William, we have the best of the best. We'll bring your beloved safely back to Earth. Lisa only glanced at the brightly colored paraglider dome, which had already risen even higher. Let's go to the lower one. They'll be landing there. Kevin urgently mentioned the girl on the airplane ramp. When are you going to fly? I'll wait until Jacob has fully recovered, the latter replied. He's the only one I trust. And anyway, it's so great and amazing and beautiful here. She spread her arms and breathed in the still warm, clean air, but with a hint of fall chill. Kevin laughed. You haven't been whitewater rafting with us or riding ATVs in the mud. There you can feel all the charms of wild tourism. I think that everything is still ahead of us. Lisa smiled back. Of course, we will definitely take you with us if you want. Work, and then we'll send one on tour with people. Kevin the funny man was laughing again. No, I'm only with my husband. Lisa shook her head. So for a lively conversation they reached the lower site, wherein the tents found a thermos with herbal tea and sandwiches. A lot had changed in Jacob and Lisa's lives over the past summer. They sold their apartment in the city and bought a smaller place away from the center. And the remaining money they took an old van in good condition. Kevin did not have to be persuaded for a long time. He was happy to return to the company and travel to the mountains again. He only asked for a good insurance policy in case of unforeseen circumstances. Lisa took over the information part of the company, handled advertising, answered the phone, and kept the documentation. Jacob was not yet able to fly as an instructor. He had not yet fully recovered from his injury, but he was happy to tell tourists about the coolest places to visit. Gave a copy of his autographed book to the most curious. But the biggest change was in Lisa and Jacob's relationship. It was now official. There was no lavish wedding, no expensive gifts, no typical dress. The young people signed, sat with their loved ones, and drove off to the mountains. That evening, by the time of the wedding, Jacob was walking with a cane and no longer needed crutches, much less a wheelchair. The doctors only applauded him and called it nothing short of a miracle. It's good to be here again and to be back to the old way. Kevin stretched noisily with a satisfied face. Almost the old way, Lisa corrected him. I'm sorry. Kevin made a changing gesture with his hand. Suddenly Jacob's cell phone, which had remained in Kevin's pocket, caught the connection and played a familiar tune, announcing an incoming call. Kevin deftly retrieved the device and brought it to his ear. Yeah, no, that's not Jacob. What's he flying? Kevin winked at Lisa, who was interested, listening to this half-hearted dialogue. How does it fly? Yeah, like this. Already recovered. Which I think is an irrelevant question. He's already married and loves her very much. While Kevin put the phone back away. Who was that? Lisa asked with curiosity. There is a star that has fallen. Kevin waved his hand indefinitely in the direction. Suddenly he jumped up from his seat and shouted, Fly, fly. Catch it. Lisa jumped up from her seat and rushed after Kevin. The two of them, with Valerie's help, brought Jacob safely back to solid ground. He was unhooked from the cradle, and the man was sprawled on the grass, spreading his arms and looking up at the autumn blue sky with sparse powders. Alive? Laughing, Lisa asked. More alive than ever before, Jacob blurted out, putting his hands behind his head.
Subscribe and click the bell. And I told you, Camille, you're an idiot. Letting him walk away with your money like that. Emily's words stayed in the woman's head. What was I supposed to do? You're not a trophy, but you're my best friend, and you know very well that Stephen left with the money when I wasn't home. Camille still could not get over the fact that the money she had collected for her daughter's enrollment, her husband simply took it and left for a young mistress, just leaving a note on the table. I'm sorry, I took the money. It's mine. But I'll leave you the apartment. Goodbye, beggar. The woman simply could not believe her words when, on the eve of her daughter's enrollment in college, she found on the table such a message from her spouse. And it would not be so offensive if this money he earned together with her and were needed for repairs or a trip to the sea. But as it is, Emily, you know very well that I collected them on a penny, plus from the sale of my mom's apartment left and need apples for admission to the university. She's smart, but there are no budget places in that institute. It's all paid. All right, she can't be a dentist, so maybe she should choose a simpler specialty. Well, it's true, so God didn't give her that path. No money, no profession. What are you talking about? I didn't study to be a doctor myself. At least let my daughter be what she wanted to be. It's true, Camille went to medical school when she was young, but she didn't pass the competition. But on the financier entered and all her life worked first as an administrator, then a senior administrator, assistant manager in a major metropolitan company in the Department of Raw Materials Supply. And what can I say? Although the work paid well, but it was not what she liked. But where to go? Work was money, and she had to raise her daughter, and she had to pull her husband along. Yeah, that husband wasn't the best spouse. He worked as an ordinary and not quite successful office employee financier in a government office. A cauldron, so to speak. What can you do? His work itself suited him. After all, you cannot really strain at work, and after just sit and drink beer with colleagues to crack. And then, apparently, there was some mistress who stole him away. But stealing is one thing, but living large is another. And nowadays, not everything is so cheap and accessible. Girl, I'm sorry, but the truth is, you know I've disliked your man since the wedding, and I've always said hide the money, gold, and documents. That's the first thing you should take in case of flood, fire, and divorce. Oh well, don't feel too bad. I owe you the right amount for the first year, and that's enough. She's my goddaughter after all. And then, but then what about me? Well, really, I have to give them back and study for 5 years. Where will I find another 4 years? I don't know what to do. There's nothing left to sell. Well, by the way, I can help you. I have an acquaintance. He's been giving me the runaround for a while. Well, don't look at me like that, friend. I'm a beautiful, glamorous girl. I know I can afford to sigh. Oh, come on. I'm sorry. Tell me about your beau. Is he a banker or a tycoon? Or is he some kind of criminal who can give me money for nothing? Imagine that. He may not give you as much money as you need, but he's the owner of a large but very large company. So he once mentioned to me that he needs a person to manage the company, smart, knowledgeable. And you're my mouse, you're just what I need. Not as pretty as me, but you'll have more brains than me. How's that sound? Well, really, I can handle it. After all, it's one thing to be a senior in my company and control the supply of raw materials and other issue of your acquaintance. But it's a very large company. There, probably, and the level of international need a person with the appropriate training. Don't worry, I'll help you. He really is. The man is normal, adequate, will look at you, at your labor characteristics, If necessary, we'll send to training courses. So don't worry, and her friend hugged her gently. Camille stroked her arm. Yeah, things happen in life. You gotta help out. The man will definitely come back, crawling on his knees. That a modern girl needs money and nothing else. And there's love and carrots, as it was in their youth. For them, simply something amorphous and does not exist as such. But Stephen is still walking and crawling, saying sorry. Sorry, I want to go home with your cutlets and repairs. Emily, thank you. I'm really getting discouraged. You know my daughter is everything to me. And if I can learn to be a dentist with your bosom, and she'll treat our teeth in her old age, and we'll give her candy and all sorts of sweets. And we both laughed. They did. It's so good to have a friend who will help you borrow money in the end, and enjoy, and will advise you on how to deal with it. Camille had known her since she was a little girl. We went to school together. Then they disappeared during college, but then they met again. Camille had taken a friend as a cousin when she gave birth to her, Elon, and never regretted it. Now she's helping her and her daughter. Stephen really was a slippery type. Not only her best friend, but also her mother. Now deceased, though. Although at that time Camille was in love with him and simply did not notice or did not want to notice anything around her, especially did not listen to her own conscience and intuition. Now she is reaping the fruits of her own carelessness. All her life Camille has been pulling her family, her daughter, her house, her work, her husband, who wanted nothing more than to eat and drink with friends. Sometimes, however, to go fishing, to sit, so to speak, dial up and commune with nature. And it turns out that nature just burst into their lives and took her away. And most importantly, seized her hard-earned penny by penny money. But that was only the beginning of what Camille's destiny was in store for. Camille, you take my advice, said a slightly tipsy Emily. Best friends, file a divorce. Or better yet, write a statement to the police. Well, say the money is missing, and confirm that they were. And you just sold your mother's apartment. Emily, I understand perfectly. But he's not going to get that money back. It's gone. Let's just forget it was ever in my hands or in my house. You said your house. Then I'd better change the locks so the bastard doesn't get the deed to the apartment. Or you'll come home and it'll be 0.0. That's something Camille thought about at her leisure. If the husband left and his new girlfriend has the keys to the apartment, where is the guarantee that she will not come here to get something else? The woman nodded her head and said, Yes, you're right. We'll have to call a locksmith on the weekend and have him change the locks. Or they'll really take out the last of it. Already this Sunday, the locksmith was changing the locks on Camille's door from the morning and smiled with all his 32 teeth. Yes, the young one is smiling and hitting on her and coming to visit, though he's old enough to be her son. Camille, you should change the doors. Your locks are good German. But the canvas and the frames are flimsy, and they can't withstand the pressure if you move them with a strong shoulder. But that's how your shoulders, Camille decided to support the playful mood of the guy, and smiled back at him. Yeah, like my shoulders. Do you live without a husband? You can feel that there is no man's hand in the house. The boy looked carefully through the corridor and thought to himself, I should fix the lamp and the shelf. It must be badly held. Yes, this house has been without a good and strong man's hand for a long time. How long have you known Emily? Camille decided to change the subject. She didn't want to raise another little mama's boy. Oh, a long time. You know, I'm her neighbor, so I often repaired her faucets and washed them. I recently wired the light fixture and hung a chandelier. If necessary, I'll do it for you, and you can feed me dinner. You mean hunger? No, it's just to fill up on coffee, so to speak. And if you don't want to, she really didn't want to have a relationship right now. Especially not this young man. He could be her son, though he's got the right hands. To tell the truth, his wife would be lucky to have a master in the house, not like her Stephen, who had never hammered a nail in the house in his whole life. No, I suppose he'd hammered a nail or two in his life. Otherwise, he just ate and drank. That's about it. Young man, no offense, but you're too old for me. Oh, Camille, how old are you? You're a woman in the prime of life. You yourself simply do not realize your beauty and strength, so to speak, of your years. Thank you very much. I don't even know your name. Unfortunately, you're just Robert, but think about it. Here's my number. And the guy handed me a business card. There's nail a shelf, hammer a nail into a wall, or fix a faucet. In my case, just accept an invitation for coffee or invite me to your place. Okay, I'll think about your offer. But right now, as a hostess, this is not a well-maintained or renovated home. I ask you, Robert, how much do I owe you? It's not much. Give me 200 and we'll call it even. Camille paid the guy and closed the door behind him and exhaled. Well, at least Elon at the Tudors didn't see all that scent, as her grandmother would say. Though well, the woman was actually pleased to hear the young lad say such words. After all, she had long ago waved goodbye to herself, or rather, how she had given up on herself. At least she always looked after herself. She dressed according to fashion, made makeup, but she looked askew at all the harassment of men from the outside, trying to culturally dissuade each of them. Yeah, Camille, you look pretty good. Maybe I do. Emily divorce her husband and have an affair with a young guy, get back on her feet and go out again. She's an empress. She danced around her apartment. And for the first time she smiled at the fact that her Stephen was not in the house. Camille spun dancing to her favorite tune, which hummed under her nose, and did not even hear how John entered the apartment. This is me watching in a good mood. We have an occasion. I guess, father. I'll pay you back. Well, daughter, I didn't hear you come in. No, our daddy didn't return the money. But you know, maybe that's not the point. You've got yourself a lover. You've got yourself a lover. Her daughter was always understanding, loved her more than her father, though she resembled Stephen in appearance, but her character was her mother's. Elon could tolerate for a long time, but when it became unbearable, just became like a tigress protecting her cubs. And when her daughter found out about her father's betrayal, about the fact that he had done such a mean thing to them, she simply went into her room and did not come out for almost 24 hours. And then she just told her mother that her daddy was dead. Yes, in essence, he was dead to Camille. But the woman was already hoping that her husband would come to his senses and maybe even give her the money. But no, she'd given up on them long ago. She'd seen how cunning and money-hungry modern girls were. Elon, let's have dinner. Come on. By the way, Aunt Emily will help us with the money. It's almost time for school, and we have to pay for it. Yes, she'll help us. And not only will she help pay for the first year, but she promised to get me a better job. Wow, maybe I'll have more money though. I need it. New sneakers, and my cell phone is really old. And the girl looked pityingly at her mother, and then at her phone. Yes, phones. Really, the daughter has a rarity. And in the institute you need to be not worse than everyone else. Let not better, but she smiled and quietly sighed and rubbed her daughter on the head. I thought you worked part-time this summer. And how much you do not have enough to buy a cross and a new phone. Mom, really, where's the money coming from? I mean, we're not exactly on a budget yet. Sweet daughter, that's my job as an experienced financial planner. And Elon gave her mother a hug and a peck on the cheek. But only tomorrow after work on Sunday you'll choose it yourself. Daughter in joy ran to her room to the old laptop to share her joy in the social network. Yeah, that old laptop is the only valuable thing Stephen has left. He unknowingly took this laptop and gave it to his daughter for her 15th birthday. She was overjoyed, but not for long before another drunkenness of her husband, when he raised his hand on her and on the little girl, promising with anger to break the laptop or sell it and drink the money. From that moment on, his daughter turned her back on him for forever. And after the incident with the theft of the family money put aside for Elon's studies, she simply stopped noticing him. And when he went to his mistress, I'll find the money, period. Camille looked at the wedding ring. she still wore on her hand. Maybe Emily was right. It would be worth taking the ring off, divorce her husband, and get a new life at a new job. And having to buy her daughter sneakers and a phone would be the perfect excuse to pawn the ring tomorrow. Sell it? Probably not. After all, she wasn't ready to fully let go of the past, no matter how hard she tried. Tomorrow, she'd have to go to the pawn shop, and then she'd have to make her daughter happy. Elon, how would you like me to pick up a pizza tomorrow? Huh. Mom, you're definitely hiding something from me. Why don't you tell me what happened? Nothing. Maybe Emily's right. I should file for divorce, change jobs, go to a dance class, or something. And then maybe even get a nice man to go to the movies or the theater with, maybe even for coffee. And maybe you'll even bring him to our house to meet your teenage daughter. And I'll use that as an excuse to go to Evelyn's for a sleepover, beer and boys. Yeah, you can go to Evelyn's, but no beer. And the boys. You'll get in first, and then you'll have no shortage of boys at school. Although you know very well that she won't approve of excessive drinking. If you drink in moderation and, if possible, a good product. I'm just kidding. Okay, I gotta go to Evelyn's. We're gonna study for our midterms. She's doing her finances, and I'm doing my medicine. Today is Thursday. I'll probably be at a friend's house Friday, and Saturday, Sunday, her parents will bring me home in their car. And a window in the cheek. Daughter ran to her friend's house. Daughter, only not long, it's late. And you haven't eaten. It's okay, I'll eat at Evelyn's. Yeah. And by the way, if you need anything, maybe we can go with her and her parents to the dacha for a barbecue. You don't mind, do you? No, it's fine. Just call me if you're staying there. Okay, shouted Elon, running out of the apartment, slamming the door. Come on. At least you didn't get any sleep. Finally got some sleep. They cooked something simple and at least cleaned the apartment because there was no time. And Camille started to do what she had planned, even though it was already evening, and she had to go to work tomorrow. There was a pawn shop on the way. A couple hours later, Elon called and said she was staying at a friend's house for the night and that she was going to a barbecue on Friday. Yeah, that's it, Camille. Soon my daughter's gonna find a date and get married. Maybe even move to another city. And you'll live alone. That's okay. Maybe I'll find a beau after all. She smiled at her thoughts, fixed her hair, and looked at herself in the big mirror in the corridor. He's got a nice figure, too. His hair is still black wing of the wise raven gives, and the oval of the face is still nothing. Breasts. It's not without reason that the young master looked at her so much. He knows she's gone. Where to look for the best? I'll show you again, Stephen. You'll come to me for favor. And in fact, she did. But she didn't know it yet. Camille woke up to the fact that someone had been ringing insistently and beating his fist on the wooden floorboard since morning. Camille opens and Stephen, I need to talk urgently. Oh God, you're the last thing we need here, Camille thought and looked at her watch. 6 o'clock. I wonder what brought him here so early and on a Friday. The woman threw off her robe and went to the door, but she was in no hurry to open it. Stephen, I'm not going to open it. What do you want? I need to get my things. And what's with the whole talking through the door thing? Open up, and we'll talk like normal people. Normal people don't steal tuition money. Daughters don't take them to their mistresses. Well, no need to knock on the door. Pack your things and come back on Sunday. What the hell are you talking about? Open the cradle, asshole. He started banging on the door with his fist. But then Camille heard a door open on the top floor. And the neighbor, by the way, a military man who works for the police, his voice enslaved. Stephen, don't knock on the door. You've been told to back off. If you don't listen, I'll call the riot police. Yeah, her neighbor is such a responsible, order-loving guy. Wouldn't let her get too excited. And he's seen Camille filming, how he often drinks on weekends. There was even a case when he, being a little tipsy, asked Camille, "You're a normal woman. Work, Looks, apartment. Why do you need a man like that? And the occasion was trivial. Stephen was drunk as usual, apparently so much so that he just fell asleep on a bench in the yard. Didn't even notice the puddle of matches underneath him. Camille wouldn't even take him home. They say, let him sleep on the street to air out. And tomorrow we'll talk, although we didn't have to talk much. The husband himself realized how much ours went and came home apologizing. I'm sorry, my fault. I had a drink with my friends. It was an embarrassment. Yeah, embarrassing. Bossy was lying on the bench, and men spit on you. That's what friends are called. Go pray and don't ever sleep in the same bed with me again. From that moment on, Camille simply refused to sleep with her husband. It pissed Stephen off even more. He could call her a cold woman when he was drunk. Talk to a man over a beer about how sexy and macho he was. And as a wife, it hurt Camille at first. But then she just let it go. No, she wasn't cold. Just probably hadn't met someone she was ready to share a bed with. But as they say, into fire and water. Stephen simply nullified that desire with his words and attitude. But on Sunday, Stephen came early for his things. Good, at least the daughter went with a friend to the dacha to her parents, so she did not catch from the very beginning how the father takes out of the house his own old things, even for nightwear. You're just old, divorced with a trailer. I've already filed for divorce, so take even your old socks. I don't even want them in here. Fine, take them. It's all here in this old suitcase that you brought with you when you moved in. So you're welcome to move in with that old lady with the trailer. And my daughter doesn't mind. Come on. I hope you didn't think to have a daughter with me. I'm not paying child support. At that very moment, Elon was coming up the stairs, and she heard these words that her father had said, or rather, shouted at her. She realized that the words were spoken both to her and to her mother, though more than anything else it offended her. The fact that her father did not recognize she was called, you could say, illegitimate. Unnecessary to him, it just killed the girl, but she did not show it. And she just told her father in her eyes, "Then why do you cling to us so much? Go to your young one. You've already made your choice." And walking past him into the apartment, the daughter contemptuously said, "Mom." What's more to say, good daughter, Camille thought. She knows how to fight back. And Stephen just clenched his teeth and grabbed an old suitcase and began to descend the stairs. His fate had long been written in the book of life, and the old and shabby suitcase hinted at it. It simply opened on the steps, and all the things spilled out on it, fanning out: socks, scarves, hats to underwear and t-shirts. And Stephen decided to gather up all his old junk and take it out. The neighbor from upstairs couldn't help but move in the direction of the local debauchee and quietly giggled. In principle, what quiet is there in the old walls of a Stalinist house? This laughter sounded almost like a bell ringing. It made the man even more angry, and he, despite, began to collect and stuff his belongings inside the suitcase. Grishchenko for a long time yet. The voice sounded so ringing that everyone thought it was a child speaking. Well, no, it was a young girl, almost a child with doll-like appearance, painted eyelashes, pumped lips, and bright makeup. And in her high heels, she gave the impression that if she didn't fall off her high heels now, she would certainly fly away at the next sweep of her painted eyelashes. Yes, a hammer. All around thought, sharply shifting their gaze and attention to this one. Yeah, you've picked a young one. I'll give you that. The neighbor snickered and went upstairs. Yes, she's certainly a beauty with a doll-like appearance. Camille thought and smiled to herself. Such a beauty is not a pity to let go. She takes it all. Although no, she felt sorry for her daughter the money that Stephen took. After all, now the question of enrollment and payment is in doubt. And Elon wanted so much to enroll this year. But nothing, even the worst, can be turned to good. Emily will help. And if the job comes up again, you can live a good life without holy socks. And that's the solution. She smirked, slammed the door, closing behind her own past, which so loudly and scandalously left her house. Mom, what was that exactly? Daughter, though, she understood that her father was coming to get his things, but that's just how a daughter is. Apparently, Dad decided to take his old socks and t-shirts out of our house, so you or I wouldn't have to take out the garbage again. Yeah, it's the one with the pouty lips, I can see that. God, what's the fear? My daughter theatrically grabbed her head and went into the bathroom to scream as she went. Mom, I'm fine. I prepared for the entrance tickets, learn tickets, boys were, but without beer and wash, and sleep for a couple of hours. You'll eat. The mother thought how her daughter has grown for this year, but she will still be a little girl for her. No, I was fed in another family by the river with yesterday's kebabs, had breakfast, and my parents were brought here. So don't worry, I'm not hungry. She closed the door and turned on the water, and Camille went to the kitchen to put on the kettle and make herself some fragrant tea. The woman liked to start her weekend morning with a literate drink, and in fact, she was glad her daughter was home and doing well. Elon was having a great time, and Stephen had finally taken all her belongings. Nothing to remind her of her husband. And he's gonna sue. That's a frightening piece of news. At least I don't have to pay a fee. Mom, Dad got here early to pick up his stuff. Yeah, probably about 10 minutes before you got here, which is fine. It's just that I was getting out of the car and my parents and his stupidity just got out of the red Mini Cooper. That's quite a car. Probably wasn't bought with my hard-earned money. And the daughter grinned. After all, she had long dreamed of such a car, but she realized that her mother would not pull it out. Her father wouldn't give it to her. Camille stroked her head and said, "Let's not do this. It's not our headache. How did she get it there? And you know damn well that young lady's father won't. Mom, I'll tell you more than that. He'll come crawling back in a couple months and say, I'm sorry, take her in and feed her. That lip's got nothing but lips and eyelashes. What's she worth? And that dress she's wearing is worth a lot. How much? Probably your entire paycheck for a month at the most. I understand. But what can I do then? I didn't even realize it was like this. A gray hair on my head. And now it's too late. The money's gone. Dad's gone. I don't care if he shows up. As long as they don't bring him back. Well, that's my daughter. But don't worry. I'm not taking him back. Maybe your godmother's right about getting him out of here. By the way, you and I were going to go and pick you a phone and a cross at the market today. You okay? Yes, but let me sleep for a couple hours, and you wake me up at 9 o'clock, and we'll get ready. Camille nodded her head. And what did she poke her daughter on the cheek with? How good did she smell? It smelled of her shampoo and childhood. And while her daughter slept, she should go through her closet and choose what to wear to town, going through her closet of things. Camille thought that a long time ago, Antonina drove. There are 3 things. One is old, out of fashion. Nothing to wear. I should really throw half of my things in the trash, leaving the minimum. And starting from the beginning and not putting her decision off, she began to tear off her things and throw them on the floor. Enough of her thinking about others. It was time to get herself in order. Looking through the pile of things, from which she selected only 3 dresses and a couple of suits, Camille thought that one suitcase, like Stephen's, would not do here. A package of 3 or 4 should be taken to the dump. Moth, why did you decide to do a cleanup this morning? What about the market and the mall? Yes, you know, my daughter gave me a good meeting in the morning. I thought about it and decided that my closet has as much old stuff in it as his suitcase. I'll probably throw it all in the dumpster and he'll take you shopping. You'll help me pick out a couple of decent suits. The daughter looked at her mother carefully, saying, "Where did we get the capital from?" Camille didn't pretend and took out her purse. I showed her the money, and then my right hand, which no longer had a wedding ring on it. I just pawned the little diamond engagement ring your father gave me when he proposed. Well, really, the daughter couldn't sell it, just pawned it. And then she could buy it back. Maybe my godmother's right. We should cut right to the heart of the matter. You're so smart. You think you're gonna get married. Live with me for almost 16 years, and then we'll talk about it together in our old age. Yes, such two old ladies who are already years old and have grandchildren running around, two old cats, and without whom we feed meat from a spoon. We're really gonna get a cat. It's been a long time since I've had a living thing in the house. I remember having a guinea pig and a parrot when I was a kid, but we could never get a cat. Then my mom got allergies, then my husband. Did you get one? Where to? I'm thinking an animal. I don't mind. By the way, Evelyn has a cat, a beauty, a PR. A redhead should give birth. So I think we'll get a kitten by New Year's Eve. Just dibs on the cat. They're so cool. Will you be honored? You're the imam. Come on, I got it. All right, come on, get ready. Let's go to the market, and then to TSUM or straight to TSUM. Let's go there. I know a couple boutiques. Evelyn gave me some discount cards, so mom's on the cheap. I've been working a little over the summer, hoping for a nice dress. Maybe that's enough for you. No, you're gonna have to splurge, Mom. Camille hugged her daughter. What a good girl she raised. The way they take care of their mother. And that her ex-husband, who had splurged on a ring and helped her make repairs. She kissed Elon on the top of the head and patted him on the back. Say, let's go get ready. A few hours later, they were sitting in a cafe with their purchases, ordering pizza and juice. God, what a fool she was that she gave her husband and herself and her daughter the minimum of attention. She smiled and looked at her beauty, who was sitting and showing off her new colors on her legs, twirling her phone in her hands, which she thought was really expensive, and told how cool it was at her parents' dacha. Elon. And if we eventually buy a dacha, well, dacha is a strong word. So let it be a small house of 100 hectares. So 5 or 6 garden, raspberries, strawberries, and we'll come on weekends. I'll take care of the berries, plant tomatoes, and then we'll do the planting. Mole, it's not for that there are kebabs to make a camping put a barbecue, folding chairs. Imagine how cool it will be. We will not go for cucumbers and tomatoes, but for example, fry meat and fish on mangoes. You like fish, don't you? Camille closed her eyes for a moment and imagined this picture described by her daughter in front of her eyes. God, really, why did she only come to this now? You know, I still have your great-grandmother. My grandmother used to say you have to grow up to the ground before you can grow a vegetable garden. I guess I have. I really want to plant. There are different berries, onions, herbs. We'll have your barbecue, my herbs, cucumbers, and all that. And a hammock. They sat and ate pizza and talked, and in the evening Camille looked in the mirror in her new suit. There was a new dress on the chair. She had to buy some shoes, blue boots, and she could take her daughter to the institute, to come to the first bell and be embarrassed. Why did you come in an old dress? Mommy, how beautiful you are. How does this suit suit you? Do you think I won't be ashamed to go to your first call at the institute in it? No, Mom, you know, you have to pay the rent in a week. I got into the competition, but if I don't pay for a year, the place will go to another applicant. The daughter looked guiltily at her mother. I don't know how to put the question further, but Camille tapped herself on the forehead and picked up her cell phone. Emily, hi, and you promised to bring me the money today. I didn't forget. Don't worry, girlfriend. I'm just on my way to you in my new boss's car. Wait, what's that? What new boss? Emily, I really don't understand this. You don't have to. I'll be there in a few minutes. I thought I'd surprise you. But you called earlier, so put the kettle on. The girl's off. Camille stood in a new suit and in front of the mirror for a couple of minutes and did not understand what was going on. Friend Money new boss is not clear at all who he is and why goes to a potential employee. Sunday night. Mom, what's going on? Elon saw her mother's face, which from surprise must have stretched in a way it never had before. She looked at her daughter and quietly said, yes, there's Nancy coming to bring money. She says she's going to introduce us to my new boss. I honestly don't understand anything. What's there to understand? If we get the money, we'll pay for school. Maybe we can find you not only a boss, but also a new life partner. And then the doorbell rang so insistently that both jumped from surprise. Well, there's your new boss. And you in a new suit, as they say. You'll meet him with a gun. Elon, don't be silly. He's not stupid, he understands. And Camille went out on wobbly legs, opens the door. I feel like an idiot in this new suit. Opening the door, the woman saw on the threshold smiling Emily, who under the arm held a handsome man of short height, gray hair. That was the first thing that caught Camille's eye. Though her friend immediately motioned her off the threshold and into the apartment, saying hello to Elon and introducing her to all the men. Good evening. This is Christopher, the owner of a large logistics company, who at the moment needs an experienced and honest manager, someone like Camille. Camille, meet your potential boss. Christopher, this is Camille. Remember that movie, Remember, Office Romance? Good afternoon, Camille. I'm sorry to surprise you, but I've told you so many good things about you. I'm in desperate need of an unobtrusive person inside the company. I don't know how I talked myself into coming here uninvited. I'm sorry. Camille, you're not potizing him any harm. Christopher's been running the company a long time, and it's his credo to know how his employees live and what they need. Emily, stop for a minute. I'm sorry, Christopher, if I'm not mistaken. I just wasn't prepared for the visit, but it's flattering to have good things said about me. Yes, and I'm at work at the moment, but you need the money. Your daughter got into med school, so I'll be honest, having a medic in the family is a good thing, but it's the only reason you want to change jobs in the first place, right? Yeah, and I think you can ask anyone at my job for a decent reference. And can I handle the job you're giving me? You can handle it. You've got 20 years experience. I stood up for my friend, as always, and started to undress immediately to push my companion. Camille, this cake bought their sweet fruit. Sorry, take it as an apology. It's nothing, really, come in. I'll put the kettle on. We'll sit and talk. I'll show you my resume. As the young people say, diplomas. Maybe you're not suited to a man like me. Let's talk. And then they sat in the kitchen, drank tea, and just talked about everything but work. After 2 o'clock, Christopher abruptly left for work, saying he was busy, which made Camille very wary. Christopher, thank you for stopping by. I apologize if there's anything wrong. What could be wrong? Christopher looked at the woman carefully. I came to see the man to look at my future management company. Yes, that's exactly how you'll manage. Trust my intuition and packed experience. That's why I'm letting you know right away. It's a demanding job, but it's gonna pay good money. He decided long ago that he was taking her on as manager. Sophia's recommendation of his own intuition was no longer important, and the visit to Camille's house itself is clean. Everything is arranged in its place, furnished tastefully. He has long made it a habit to visit apartments and houses where his employees or potential candidates for leadership positions live, and all because the house is the face of each employee. The way things are arranged here, that's how a person works at work. But you never know. I'm sorry, I probably look stupid, and I'm just asking unnecessary questions. It's just that Camille needs this job. I couldn't help myself as usual, and I definitely put in my 0.05 R. And she'll get it if she wants to quit her previous job. Here's to falling in love. Here's my card for you, Camille. If you decide to transfer to me, I'll guarantee you 3 times your current salary. Good working conditions, vacation time. That's it for now. 3 times my salary. But how do you know what my salary is? Oh, I'm sorry, Christopher. Emily must have told you, but it's really 3 times as much. Camille, don't doubt it. If Christopher says it's 3 times as much, it is. Go for it. You won't regret it. Christopher, if you don't mind, can I have a couple of days to solve the issue with the previous job But I want to be sure that you will take me to a new job, so that it will not happen that I leave the old job and the new one will not accept me. Your employment history is at your old job. Camille nodded her head, but she didn't understand what the question was about. So, if I'm not mistaken, your company is called Nicanor & Co. And if you don't mind, I'll come to you tomorrow, make an agreement with your bosses, and put a record of your employment right in front of you. You will be able to start on Wednesday or Thursday as soon as you solve all the issues with the transfer of the position. Camille was standing in the hallway. I just didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know how to react. But Elon stepped in. Christopher, I'm Elon, Camille's daughter, and I can speak for my mom. She agrees. It's just that she's an old school woman, and she can't just say yes right off the bat. Christopher smiled and looked at Camille and said quietly, "You are accepted. And I'll tell you more. I have already talked to your superiors and received the best recommendations from them. So I hope you will work for me. Emily, I'm waiting for you. The cars will take you home." He nodded his head and walked out of the door, closing it quietly and carefully as if it were his own. Emily shrugged quietly, kissed her friend and said, "But all friend, consider the job and a normal paycheck in your pocket. Go to work tomorrow. Old job and wait for the new boss. All call me tomorrow." And the friend slipped out the door, sending Camille and Delaunay. Air-kissed winked, saying, "It's okay. You can take it easy." When the door closed behind her, daughter and mother looked at each other and laughed. After all, everything really happened as in a joke or other funny comedy. How cool it was. I really feel like a fool in this dress, and so will look at me and think here is the efficiency here called already painted in a new dress, Mom. But everything that is done, all so spontaneous, is done for the best. Did you teach me that? Or not like that, but like this. But understand, this is my potential boss. Yes, he's a man first and foremost. Did you notice the way he looked at you? Just look at his eyes, where they're pointing. I was ready to fall through the ground. It's true that he did look at me in a special way. I mean, I could see it with my naked eye. It's, like that soap opera where the main character devours the hottie with his eyes. Oh, come on. Charming. They're all assholes, daughter, men. And remember, it's not about trying to fall in love. They're so nice, and then they can stab you in the back. But not all of them are like that. It's true, I'm looking at my girlfriend's essays. Mother and father live a long time and don't even fight. And she has Jack, a nice guy who always brings her flowers, cakes. That's great. And when she was sick, he'd sit by her and give her tea and raspberries. Daughter, well, not everyone's so good. You have to realize, this family is more like the exception to the rule. Maybe you and that medic will be the exception to the rule. Imagine that for a minute. Okay, I will, but not until I take off my dress, say my prayers, and go to bed. Come on, Mom. I'll just sit here for a while. I'm gonna write down all my contacts on my phone. Already in bed, Camille took a moment to imagine how things might work out with this Christopher, her potential new boss. What would her new job be like? Would she be able to do it? The sun, the sea, and the Yakuts their strong embrace, giving her a calmness that didn't last long. The next day, Christopher did come to work, but immediately went not to Camille's office, but to his old friend and business companion, who was the woman's boss. What can I say? He did not want to let his best employee go, but he listened to his friend's persuasions and let her go. Camille, but Christopher on one condition. You won't hurt Camille. I mean, it's complicated. Her husband took her money, then ran off with a younger woman. It's corny. But Camille's been walking around at work, not herself. I wondered if she was gonna do something to herself. Yeah, I know. But she's a tough woman, believe me. She can handle more than one divorce, and more than one husband. By the way, who told you to steal Camille from me? She really is. We're the best value for the money, and I wouldn't want to. I didn't believe you. I certainly won't tell you how I found out about such a valuable asset. And by the way, if all the information from her employment history and her profile is correct, you really are losing a valuable employee. But by the way, you're not jumping the gun with your admin staff. What are your 2 senior staffers worth? You mean Rick and Sam? Believe me, more than one company tried to poach them from me, but the good thing is they started with me from day one, from scratch, and they didn't betray me. They didn't abandon me. Why do I owe them special thanks and respect? Fine, but with Camille, you don't think she's betraying herself. No, Christopher, I know that woman's story. I know she needs money, and I simply can't offer her more financially. I get it. All right, man, let's not hold Camille up about the uniforms. It's all honorable, and I'll meet her in my office. Already got her a new work suite ready for her. Maybe it's a good thing you don't have money for Camille's raise. She's been sitting around too long. This way, she'll have her day. Christopher did a great job renting out the building where Camille worked. It's where he started out. It's a tough career path to own a logistics company. Yes, he could probably tell with his eyes closed, given the number of steps he had traveled, where he was and which office was in front of him. But why go to all that trouble? There's Camille's office. Knock, 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 knock. Camille. Good afternoon. And to you lovely ladies. Good afternoon. Oh, Christopher, you've been here all morning. Yes, logistics. It's a thing that can't be subjunctive. So, as they say, you gotta strike while the iron's hot, said Toshka. Wendy, Camille's colleague. Absolutely right. Sweet girl, Wendy. Is that what it says on your merit badge? The girl smiled sweetly and delved further into the world of overheads and statistics. So, Camille, I wrought iron while it was hot and already visited your boss. I agreed that today all the documents will be formalized, and you can come to me tomorrow. Here's the address of my company. Is Camille leaking us? Wendy's voice shook. There was a note of surprise mixed with envy. Yes, dear girl Wendy. My company is also a logistics company, but not as a senior administrator of a management company. So girls, I apologize that you so easily take your employee, but with me, promising to exhibit delicious and sweets. Okay, we're not giving Camille away for nothing, so we're expecting a clearing from you. Christopher nodded his head and left the office and started walking downstairs to his car. 5 minutes later, on the tables in the office of Camille and 2 more of her colleagues, there was a lot of goodies and sweets, coffee, tea, cake, and several kinds of candy. What can I say? Christopher didn't skimp, so to speak, and put up a payoff for the employee. Though Wendy and Vanessa, also lasting with Camille's office, were glad that she was leaving. What can I say? Women's envy is such a thing that few people would tolerate a beautiful and intelligent employee. But neither Wendy nor Nancy said that to Camille when glasses of expensive champagne were raised to her health and success. Yes, Camille, well done. Lucky you. You managed to snatch him a puppy from a handsome rich man. And you got yourself a decent job. And Wendy and I are just gonna be the administrators. Come on, girls, just wait till you get settled into your new company, so to speak, and I'll find you a weaker spot. Of course, if you don't mind. Oh, how could we, for God's sake, mind? Nancy theatrically shook her hands and rolled her eyes. She looked reproachfully at Camille. That's right, Camille. Wendy echoed her words. We don't mind, and Christopher's dress is a lot bigger, so we're all for it. Just don't forget about us. You've taught me a lot about yourself. So she gave her colleagues a friendly hug and enjoyed a few sips of champagne. Yes, she was very fond of champagne, especially this sketch, the last time we christened Elon. And that, so to speak, purely with Emily, my best friend, even though Stephen had already shown his rotten guts, and Emily slept on the floor of their shared bedroom. And now the new boss has made her happy with a nice drink. Must be expensive, Camille thought, and looked at the bottle. The barcode really confirmed that the champagne was from France. And what kind of cheese is it? with big holes like her daughter liked in fruit. Chocolate. Camille. Good afternoon. I'm Wendy, the receptionist. The girl at reception introduced herself, gave her a hand. The supervisor is already waiting for you. Let me show you out. Yes, of course, Wendy. Is it okay to call the supervisor Christopher by his first name? Just like that. It's not nice to just call him without a middle name. Honestly, I've only been here a month, but you know, he always asks to be called by his first name. I'm embarrassingly ignorant of his middle name. Oh well, thank you. If it's not against company dress code, I'll just call him Christopher. It's all a little kinky in here, isn't it? I don't know whether to wonder or wonder. Camille thought, but she didn't say anything to Wendy. Don't worry, it's true. It's not against company policy. And as you say, our chief, and as our chief says, helps to create a friendly atmosphere, to keep the emotional component at the right level. Not everyone is like that. Yeah, keep it at the right level. They will sit on their necks with such a party policy, with their legs hanging down, and then they will say that this is the way it should be. Well, maybe it works in this case, but we'll see. Camille thought in her mind, although the unpleasant residue remained. Christopher came Camille, our new employee. The girl reported to the chief about her arrival through electronic communication. Send her up and into my office. I'll be right there. Camille, please go to the chief's office. Wait for him. He's probably in a meeting. And she opened the door and let Camille inside. It's a very luxurious and tasteful office. Lots of space and light, but the windows were probably the first thing that caught his eye. From the ceiling and practically all the way to the floor, organizations that create an effect of space and weightlessness are declared. How beautifully thought out. At least such solutions for the office of the chief of men. Camille, good afternoon. How do you like the view from my window? Oh yeah, it's really breathtaking. It's like our 20E or our 21st 20E. The building itself has 21 floors. I'm practically at the top, so to speak. You don't like people walking on your heads, Camille said, and only then bought her tongue. I'm sorry, but I shouldn't have said that to you. I myself can't stand the noise from upstairs or around the sides. You and I are alike in that. I'm the same way. But this building, take my word for it, it's soundproof. So even if you were on the first floor, you wouldn't hear what was going on 20 floors up. Camille nodded her head and smiled. Then she sat down in the chair Christopher had pointed out to her. Tea, coffee. I just don't know what to offer you right now. Coffee, if I may. And Christopher, pardon my indiscretion, what's your middle name? Well, just calling you by your first name. And I'm not used to calling my boss so formally. Well, I do ask all my employees to just call me by my first name, and they shouldn't be embarrassed. This technique really works, creates a normal, friendly atmosphere in the team. And believe me, no one will sit on my neck and chase me around. Camille nodded her head and smiled. When Christopher made her a cup of coffee and placed a box of chocolates in front of her, he sat down and looked at Camille carefully. He mentally noted to himself how beautiful she looked for her years, and the man hoped he hadn't misjudged her, putting a new person in the position of manager. After all, maybe it was a good thing that a new person had been put in that position. He certainly not washed-out eye will assess the situation and point out the shortcomings. What should I pay attention to? Camille, do you realize the responsibility of the job I've entrusted to you? Yes, I do. I don't understand why you chose me, and I hope my friend didn't play a leading role. You're not the kind of man who takes on these jobs on the strength of a friend or a relative. No, I'm not. You're right, but I'll tell you why I chose you. And the first is your credentials as an administrator. They're really excellent. You were very well liked at your old job. In fact, your old boss was very reluctant to let you go. And here's the second thing I put in your favor. You're a new person, not interested, so to speak. It's important to me that you look at the situation in the company from the outside. Look at it and tell me what I should pay close attention to, what I should refine. where I should tighten tails, and so on. I hear you, Christopher. I will, frankly, I will do my best. But I also need your support and the help of your team. After all, you also realize that I have been in this field for a while, but I have never worked at this level. How does your company work? There will be no problems. I have already informed the staff, asked everyone to assist in this work, so you can be calm here. Thank you. I hope that we will live up to your expectations and our own positive characterization. I also hope that you will justify my hopes, and I will try to do everything to make you feel comfortable in my team, so that you justify your own efforts and the potential that you have in you. Strength. It was the potential that drew the eye to Camille. That's what I saw. And that is what Christopher saw in her standing on the doorstep of her own apartment. Strength that poured out of that woman with an inner light that gave no chance for any of that grief to make its way into her surroundings. Then let me show you to your office. You're welcome to stay for a day or two. Put things where you want them. And if you need people to move a table or a chair, call me. And I'll slowly bring you up to speed and the specifics of our work. Nodding her head, Camille stood up with the short man. She went to her new office. It's just as good as Christopher's business space. Lots of light, the same full wall, huge windows. But the curtains are dark, dense. We should change the curtains out loud, Camille said. And that feeling of heavy space. The man immediately understood what Camille needed and smiled to himself. Yes, I notice you also like light and space. Who doesn't? No, don't think so. I don't suffer. Claustrophobia just loves space and lots of light. Put every animal in a cage. How would it feel? Are you comparing yourself to an animal? I wonder what kind. Well, a lion, of course, but a cheetah. Or maybe a black panther. And without expecting it, Christopher started making faces. Have fun like a child. They were both having fun, and they were laughing like children. So to speak, probably, so would have had fun if a young guy did not enter the office and indecently coughing addressed to Christopher. Christopher, did you ask to come in to see Camille? Yes, David, come in. This is Camille, by the way. Meet your secretary. You need an assistant, don't you? You know, typing up orders, making phone calls, that sort of thing. So David will be sitting here in the reception area. That's where he works. I hope you noticed. That's pretty much it. Thank you, Christopher. I didn't expect to have an assistant and a secretary myself, but it's nice. I hope David lives up to your expectations of a responsible secretary. But now I wonder, I have work to do. And looking at his watch, the man left the office. Internal, wishing Camille success in the new place on his self-endurance. After all, there was still a lot of work to be done today. Although he most of all wanted to be near this woman, to laugh with her like this, maybe even to drink coffee, just to talk about nothing. But work wouldn't wait. It is necessary to go to earn money, and Camille should be given the opportunity to settle in the new place. But not Camille. Not Christopher did not know that soon in their usual way of life will burst into the hurricane named Stephen. What can I say? As the neighbor said, Stephen spent all the money taken from his wife's house on his miracle of nature. And as it turned out, it was only enough for a year, and the amount was really a lot, and it was enough for his doll Jenna not so long. Shopping in expensive boutiques, going to restaurants, sushi, bars, gifts. What's there just to pay the utility bills? Eating out every day. All of this was soon eating away at Stephen's financial potential, and her friend was demanding money. And not just for daily necessities, but for not denying herself anything. Jenna, but you know, the money's gone. I'm out of work. When I went to the resort with you, not for a couple days, but for a decade, my boss didn't just scold me, he fired me. I took 3 days off work, and it was all your fault. You know that very well. What am I supposed to do now? Well, Stephen, you're smart. You'll get a good job. You'll earn more. You've already got the keys to your Camille's apartment. And there's still money there. Jenna, you're either stupid or you're kidding. You realize we're divorced, and me showing up at her apartment is burglary. There's no way I want to go to jail. Why go to jail? You made money together with her for that apartment. That's why it's your third. And you realize that I just stole from my daughter's money, and for you what should have gone to her studies, and skipped them, by the way, together with you. That amount would have been enough for me to open my own place. That's how they got away with it. Well, kitty cat, don't be mad. Then think of yourself. And Jenna gently pressed herself against another of her cohabitants, from whom she simply pulled all the money and strength, and gave nothing in return. She was already thinking about throwing Stephen out of her apartment, and in his place to look for someone wealthy. If you ran out of money, why do I need you? Stephen was already thinking about such a variant of relationship development. True, he intended to leave his cohabitant himself. But where to go? Camille kicked out and changed the locks. Now this fool will kick out what Stephen reasoned aloud with himself, standing on the balcony, smoking strong cigarettes. Maybe I should really get a job. But shit, the former boss so spoiled my resume that I can only work as a loader. Well, what can I do? I gotta live and eat. You should smoke a cigarette or quit smoking. Otherwise I'll die before the women put me in a coffin. This option did not suit Jenna, who one day simply collected a suitcase with the things of her gone into oblivion lover and put it out the door. She didn't even bother to inform Stephen of her decision. But what was the man's surprise when he arrived at the door of his cohabitant and just saw on the threshold his old suitcase, with which he left his wife. Stephen looked bewildered at the suitcase, then at the door, and began to ring frantically with his fists as he had knocked earlier at Camille's apartment. Jenna, I'll get it, Stephen. Why is my stuff on the doorstep? Because I'm not interested in you anymore. So I decided to kick you out the door. The voice Jenna created behind her sounded unexpected, loud for her doll-like appearance, and out of surprise. Stephen jumped up and, turning around, simply could not believe his eyes. His woman stood on the stairs in the arms of some rocker, well, so to speak, gangster appearance, smiling wryly back at him. You kicked me out the door. Didn't you realize, man, that your broad is mine, and you don't live here now? No, you can sleep here on the mat guarding our happiness with Sasha. And he started laughing at Stephen, who stood there and looked at all this and couldn't do anything. What could he do? It's one thing to fight with Camille and a daughter so pathetic. It's another when you're facing a 2.5-foot tall jock who's probably been going to the gym since birth, and with one blow of his fist can blow your breath away. Jenna, then yeah, the money I spent on you, you can't do that. Yes, I can, and I already have. How did you take it from your wife? That's just how I was able to take them from you. There are more questions. By the way, I didn't just spend that money on me. I spent it on myself. We both went out with it, mind you. Stephen clenched his fists until his fingers ached, but realized that, in fact, she was right. And as they say, the boomerang came back at him. What he had done, they had done to him. There's nothing to say. And basically, there's nothing you can do about it. Where am I supposed to go at night? Stephen couldn't quite believe what was actually happening on the set. And I'm the one who said you could stay here on the mat. Listen to her moaning in bed. Jenna, she's having such a good time with me. Yeah, they'd been together a long time, and sex had become a regular thing for them. But with him, Jenna never moaned or even tried to fake. No, not until the beginning of their meeting, when she still had money in her pocket and he could spend it left and right. Now he'd lost that opportunity, and there was nothing left for him to do. How to take his things and leave. Already outside, standing under the awning, he took out his cigarettes and lit up. I had the last 5 cigarettes left, and I'm broke. Where am I supposed to go? Well, really, it's not like asking to go home, except, forgive me. Stephen stood there, taking puff after puff, and did not understand how such a clever bugger as he got into such a situation. One woman had kicked him out of the house. Really, what for? And the other simply used him like a kitten, What was he supposed to do? That man slapped himself on the forehead. What a fool he was. He forgot that after his mother's death he inherited a room in a dormitory. It wasn't a luxury apartment, but it was a good place to sleep. Stephen rummaged in his pants pocket and pulled out a bunch of keys. Shit, Jenna must have taken the keys to his apartment off the keychain when he was sleeping or washing or something. Thinking ahead and being a sneaky bastard, all she wanted was the money. Nothing else. You're a fool, Stephen. It'll be all right. There'll be a holiday on my street. A man with hands and a head is not a freak. But I need to find a job and picking up my suitcase. He walked slowly through the evening city towards his old house, where he had lived with his mother long ago, in the days of his childhood and youth. How wonderful had those years been. Even though it was an old pre-revolutionary two-story building, water and gas. That years, pardon me, had to run to the street, but still it was good for him here with his mother and his company, when he could race a ball in the oven potatoes, in the fire, picking apples in the neighboring orchard. And where are these comrades now? Not many people are anywhere, but nothing. It is possible even in my position to start everything from scratch. He approached his old house when it was already quite dark. Though why should he be surprised? And he had to stomp from one end of town to the other at practically 2 o'clock. What he saw, though, left him quietly horrified. The house looked like the set of some foreign horror movie, old with plaster, skewed exit doors. Everything around it was overgrown with thick decorations, and what was once a small shrubbery has now grown to an impenetrable thicket. Wow! Wow! A house. A nice house. How dilapidated are you? No one hacks through the bushes for an improvised bow and arrow anymore. Yes, Stephen, hello. The voice of drunken neighbor Miho brought him out of his reverie from contemplation of the old and beginning to dust the house. Hi, Miho. Are you drinking as usual? Maybe I should give up this number, but you'll teach me how to live. Yeah. And spitting under his feet, the neighbor with a bottle in his hand went to the bench, and Stephen, having picked up his suitcase, entered the entrance and began to go up to the second floor and went along the long corridor almost to the very end. There was his favorite room door. It was shabby and hadn't been painted in a long time. Though what was there to be surprised about? How long have I been gone? I closed the door about 10 years ago, and I haven't heard a peep out of it. A fool should have invested not in Jenna, but here. I'm going to fix the door. I'm afraid to imagine what's inside. Barely opened, long-ruled and not greased lock. Stephen entered the room and was stunned. An old sofa, a metal bed, a chest of drawers and a closet, a table, a chair. That was all the furnishings. And no, John, there was a small TV on the windowsill, which he had managed to barter from the older guys. I can't remember what it was worth at the time, almost 20 years ago. And now, Stephen, you live here. Good, at least I still have a bed, but I'll have to change this rotten bed and pillows. But it'll do for now. Putting the suitcase on the floor, the man went to the kitchen at least to wash up, and maybe take some boiling water to drink tea. Only now he realized how hungry he was. Oh, you helped. Good afternoon. You didn't recognize me. I'm the one who's been living here for years. Doesn't matter. A long time ago. Yes, I remember you, sir, all the way back. You used to steal canned goods from my basement, and your mama ran away from your father and sold her apartment. She gave all the money to you and bought a diamond ring for her daughter-in-law. She came here and drank a lot. I bet your wife threw you out. Well, Molly, you're as sharp as ever. And then Stephen gave a traitorous cry of hunger, especially loud when the old lady opened the lid of the frying pan with fried potatoes and meat. God, it smells so good. I'm drooling. Hungry. Yeah, I got some. You've devoured it. Here, which once again made a treacherous scream. Then bring me a plate. I'll feed you. You're not going to starve to death. His grandmother put on his plate flavored potatoes and told him how they live here, what happened, who died, who moved where, and all that. And of those who grew up with you in this house, Miho and a couple other people are left. But you know, we don't live here for the good. Damp, mold, fungus, it ate practically the whole house. But where am I supposed to go? My daughter and son died, leaving me without grandchildren. And their apartment was repossessed by the bank. Misha, he drinks. And a couple of old people just living out their days. Good thing our mayor had the roof re-roofed last year and changed the pipes. Otherwise, they'd probably be swimming in their own feces by now. Molly, this is delicious. Stephen started the potatoes and meat and thought how much he missed it all. The kind of simple food he remembered from his earliest childhood. Come on, let's go to my place. I'll pour you a drink. Remember my children. They went to the old woman's room, which was poor but clean with a characteristic senile odor. But still you have everything good here. It's not all that good. It's all junk. But how could I save my pension for new furniture? At least I could save up for a TV set. Otherwise, more Nightingale. Sit down at the table. Let's eat. I've got some sausage and bread. I'll pour it on the bread. Stephen drank a shot of moonshine and felt the liquid spreading through his internets, burning him. Oh, the grandmother's moonshine is strong. Where does she get it from? From what raw materials, the man did not want to know. Stephen only quacked, ate a piece of herring and bread, and then looked at the old woman. Pour another drink for your daughter and rest her soul. But don't drink for your son-in-law. Don't drink for that godless man. And she poured him a full shot of murky moonshine. Yes, with so much that the liquor went over the edge and splashed across the table. I see you cared more for your son-in-law. How much more than he? Poured it for the repose of his soul. Stephen thought to joke, but the old woman, apparently, did not understand his humor or did not want to understand, and just sat down on a chair and cried quietly, sobbing oxen. Only her shoulders were shaking and tears were rolling down her cheeks. What a fool I am, Stephen thought, and fell silent. The smile was quietly gone from his face, and he didn't feel much like drinking. Molly, I'm sorry. I said something stupid without thinking. Don't cry, or your blood pressure will start to skyrocket. What am I supposed to do then? Nothing. Stephen, get your drink for the taking. Go get some rest. I've got to get my own bed. I don't want to spend the night poisoning my soul. Stephen drank a shot of vodka, ate a cucumber, and left the room. Without saying a word, he quietly closed the door. What can be said? Old women are living out their lives in this dilapidated bar on a senile pension. And who will bury her? Only the state. And who will bury you? Stephen, the cage, or Alka? Never. Maybe Ilan, but she doesn't seem to have much love for her father. Whatever kind of father I am, I'm not. He went quietly into his room, opened the window, took out a cigarette and lit it. Yes, the last one in the pack. And there's no one to shoot. Right. I'll start quitting tomorrow until I get a new job and make a decent income. And now to bed. He kicked off his shoes and pants. He hung his shirt on the back of the old desk and threw the blanket off the bedspread. Yes, the bed would have to be changed, but there's plenty of time for that. Tomorrow, I'll have to wash the bed, scour the papers for job openings. I'm willing to go as a longshoreman. What was he supposed to do? Not beg Molly for a plate of potatoes and a shot of moonshine. That's how you get down to the level in a short time, which, even after all that he had been through, he did not want. Only after putting his head on the pillow, the man instantly passed out. He didn't even notice how he fell into a deep sleep and slept until almost noon. He woke up from the fact that the rays of the sun were falling on his face, and it was getting quite hot. Man, that's a good one. I'd forgotten how hot it could be in this room and how bright the sun could shine. I'll have to get some curtains from my mom's stockpile. I don't want you peeking at the sun in the morning. And wash the windows and the floors. Stephen stood barefoot on the floor and looked around. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I'll have to use a rag today and tomorrow. I don't have a man's job, but I'll have to. Stood up and smiled sweetly at the new day. and there was so calm and joyful on his soul, as probably had not been since the day when he met Camille and realized that it was her he would take as his wife. It was nothing. He would show her how to be successful and self-sufficient. But first he had to get his house in order, get a better paying job, and, Molly, good morning. Hey, sneaky, how did you sleep on your mammy? On the bed? No nightmares from the dead. Why? No, I slept like a baby. It's still good to be in your own house, or rather, a room, even if it's a ruin. Don't you have anything to live on? Well, I won't have any money yet. I'm sorry, Molly. I won't give you any money, I'm telling you, but I'll feed you. Give me a plate. I still have some potatoes left from yesterday, but I won't give you much. I'll share with you only the crumbs until I retire. Thanks for that. Stephen took some potatoes, snacked on yesterday's pickle, and smiled at the old woman and kissed her on the cheek. How good it is that there are such neighbors as this old woman who would give the last but help. At least she can live on her own. There's nothing to get a job. Thank you. But first the cleaning, then the laundry. I found soap and powder at my mom's. Yeah, we're stocked up. Something to remember my mother by. Already in the evening, collected dry linen from the ropes and moved into bed. Stephen sat down on a chair, put his hands on the tablecloth and stood up. It's nice, clean here. It's all right, that poor knave thing. Here's Camille Capello he took. At least now he's sorry. Like that sly devil, she took all his money. Though it was his own fault, Stephen said quietly and stood up and went to the kitchen to fry potatoes and eggs. Strangely enough, but in the closet, in the bedclothes he found and his mother a certain amount of money, a stash, and in new bills. That's great. Good, at least it was rubles, not coupons. There is something to live on for the first time. And then there will be work. Money will come in. Maybe I should help my daughter Elon. I don't think she's so bad. We'll see. The man ate and talked to himself. It was easier for him to think, so to speak, to talk his plans out loud. All right, we've eaten, and that's good enough. Let's just go to bed. Tomorrow will require strength. I'll have to look for a job first thing in the morning. Just drink coffee and go looking for a job. From the morning, recalculating the money and throwing a couple of bills in his pocket, Stephen took a windbreaker and went to the park. I should buy a newspaper with job ads and sit in the fresh air, read, then call back, just in case something pops up. And indeed, a job did pop up in an ad. However, it wasn't exactly what he wanted, but judging by the schedule and salary, it suited him better than ever. The job was in a logistics company as a loader with a 24-hour schedule, but the salary was almost at the level of his previous job. But the plus here is that there is no material responsibility, even if the goods were beaten, spoiled during loading. It wasn't imposed on him, which suited him just fine. So what's the number? He immediately dialed the contacts, the number, and made the call. After a couple of beeps, a girl picked up the phone and a pleasant voice immediately said, "Hello, Manager Miranda here." "Miranda, good afternoon. My name is Stephen. I'm about a job ad for a loader is still up to date. Yes, you can come in for an interview today. You'll be scheduled for 11. No problem. Sweet girl, I'll be there earlier." "Thank you, Stephen. We don't have to. We also have applicants booked at different times, and we don't want to create pandemonium." "Got it. I'll be at your place at 11 o'clock, then. Give me the address." And quickly wrote down the address in pencil on a piece of paper. Stephen was rubbing his hands together. It'd be time and paycheck. It's not like sitting in a stuffy air-conditioned office. And 24 hours a day is quite acceptable. Yeah, we can take care of the house, and work will be a paycheck. And then we'll see. We should ask around, see if they'd be interested. Not a loader. A financier, yeah. Exactly, a financier, even if not so advanced, and a willing worker. But I'm still a specialist. The bosses even awarded me 3 certificates. But Stephen doesn't have to choose yet. But Stephen at that moment did not know who he would meet at the new place of work. An hour later, the man was already standing under the office of a large logistics company and looking at the building itself, if they're renting such a space, apparently. "Good afternoon. You're being interviewed." A security guard came over and looked at him carefully. "Yes, but really, I have an appointment for 11 o'clock. In the meantime, I thought I'd take a look around. It's not customary to look around. You either go into the building or maybe wait for your time in the park." And the guard already pointed to the park, located not far from the office center. Stephen looked at his watch and did not argue, but simply nodded his head and turned around and went to the park. It was only 10:30. There was still plenty of time, but I didn't want to annoy the guards. Yes, if they have such guards, then, in fact, the company is a solid company working honestly and without deceit. That suited Stephen. He chose the nearest bench, from where there was a beautiful view of the entrance to the building, and began to wait. "Good afternoon, nice girl," Miranda said to Stephen, smiling, having read the name tag on the admin girl's shirt. "I'm interviewing for 11 meters. Where do I go?" "What job opening?" Her pretty face lit up at the sight of a potential employee, quite still cute. Stephen, of course, did not want to say that there is an interview for the position of a loader, but who knows how they have a system here. "Yes, the position is for a pretty girl." "Not a pretty girl. Don't look at her." "Well, I'm not looking at her. I just need to know where to send you, to whom, and to which floor. And in that respect, well, I'm the one for the loading dock," clearly said the girl with the pretty face from Wings. "Let's go to Kevin in the basement then. You take the elevator down to the ground floor and there at the guard post. Ask for Kevin." "Thank you. And you can use the elevator right here," and he pointed to the elevator in the lobby. "Or do you have a special freight elevator for movers?" He wanted to make a joke, but the girl looked at him so that Stephen immediately realized that his humor would not be understood or accepted here. Well, the hell with you, makeup. The doll is probably as self-serving bitch as his ex Jenna, who simply worked through his money, leaving the man with a nose. Turning around, he pounded his fist on the receptionist's counter and, without even saying thank you, went to the elevator. "Good afternoon. I'm here to interview for Kevin. You're for the loader position." The voice of the guard sitting at the entrance sounded indifferent. "He's kind of talking to the wall, isn't he? Wait, he's out right here. He'll be right back." That guard was too curious at the entrance. "He's so indifferent, you'd never know how they work here. But I guess there's no such thing as a one-time thing. All right, we'll figure it out as we go." Even though what he had seen had shocked him. And the man completely forgot about security work and everything that not so long ago he cared about. The basement door opened, and the first to enter the basement was a presentable-looking man in an expensive suit. A man in an expensive suit who led his Camille by the hand. They were chatting sweetly, discussing some of their work issues. But by the way the spark ran, it was very clear between them. They were definitely lovers, or at the very least, they were just beginning an affair. Stephen stood and watched, and couldn't say a word. She was working here. I wonder who. "Good afternoon. I understand that you are Stephen, an applicant for the position of a loader," asked the man walking next to Camille. "And I, Kevin. Have you had experience as a loader? Term or able to work or loader?" Stephen did not find what to answer. He just didn't know what a Rockland was. But he'd heard of a loader, though he'd never worked with one. He just didn't know how. And Camille just stood next to this man and looked at her husband with a kind of bewilderment mixed with pity, saying, "You've come all the way from Stephen, from being an office financier to being a loader. Yes, you realize I used to be a finance guy, and I don't know what a Rockland is, even though I've heard of movers. Yeah, that's a bummer." Kevin looked at him appraisingly and rubbed his beard. He realized that people don't just go from being a finance guy to being a custodian. "So why did you leave finance like that?" "We just need someone to work in finance." But that's when Stephen's legs gave out completely. What could he say? He stole money from his daughter, who's Camille's wife. Right there now, she saved up for years and left with it for her mistress. And she just missed that money, ran away from him, threw him out the door with a suitcase. Yes, there, Kevin, meet Kevin. This is my ex-husband, and he lost his job, so to speak, for family reasons. You just don't get the wrong idea as a professional. I think he'll get the job, but you gotta train him. He's your husband. I thought you said you were divorced, but Stephen and I split up. We decided to get a divorce. So why don't you give him a job in finance? I'll see if I can get him fired in that position. You can always fire him if you need to. Well, if Camille put in a good word for you, and in a managerial capacity, I think you should probably come by tomorrow. Come to my office in 313 on the 3rd floor at 10 o'clock, and I'll take you to the finance department to see the head of the department. Let him talk to you. Talk to you. I'll put in a good word for you, and Camille's already given her review. I don't think there's gonna be a problem. I hope you won't be a problem. No, don't worry. I can drink, but strictly on weekends, and it won't affect my work. Good, then I'll wait for you tomorrow at the agreed time, and don't be late. Stephen nodded his head and turned and went to the exit. This was a turn he had not expected in any way. His Camille, whom he called an old woman with a trailer, was not just younger when dressed, but became a luxurious woman, working as a manager. That's quite a turnaround. Going outside, he took out a pack of cigarettes and smoked, standing on the porch, and did not understand how to be further to go to this job and serve under his former wife, or to go look for another. But what can he do but count other people's money? I don't know shit, and I don't want to be a longshoreman. I'm always sweaty, dirty, carrying heavy loads. What's the point? He threw the cigarette butt into the trash can near the entrance and was about to leave, but turned back and saw Camille coming down the steps. She was a damn good-looking woman with a nice figure and nice clothes. And how did she smell of expensive perfume? But hello, Stephen. Watching movies, going out and hiding all the money I've been saving for school. What new wife or mistress doesn't feed you, doesn't give you money? Oh, come on. By the way, thanks for sticking up for me and helping me with my job. Yeah, the bitch kicked me out the door. So where are you living? My mom's room on the block. You remember I told you about it. Well, I've heard about the old room in the demolition yard, but as I recall, it was inherited from my mother, who died about 10 years ago. And the whole time, the room was abandoned. Why derelict? It was empty, yes. At least now I've cleaned it up, made the bed, hung some old curtains. You couldn't sit in your own house with your wife and daughter. So you decided to leave the young ones. And what did you end up with? A battered look. No money. And a bed in an old room. Camille, don't push me. It's bad enough in here as it is. That bitch Alka kicked me out of the house like a kitten and brought a new holich into the house. And they're probably right. They're living off my money today. Stephen, don't make me laugh. This money I collected pennies for our daughter, whom, by the way, you called illegitimate. So please don't say another word, lest I regret putting in a good word for you. She threw her head down and walked to the bus stop. And as luck would have it, she had to stop by the IRS, solve a delicate issue, and run into her ex-husband on the way out. Well, that's a bummer. This boor takes offense at someone for simply kicking him out the door. Good for you. That Jenna showed you what you're worth. She was on the bus, and she was mad at herself. I don't know why or at whom. Well, I guess Mother Fate was finally able to pay her ex-boyfriend back in full, punishing him in a way she wouldn't have punished herself. But on the one hand, she felt sorry for Stephen, not adapted to life, unable to earn even for himself. He'd gone for a walk. Maybe she shouldn't have stood up for him. Let him work as a longshoreman. He'd know what it's like to get his white office pens dirty, to carry heavy loads and all that. No, I don't. My pity, it's gonna get me killed. She said it out loud on the bus and didn't think people could hear her. You're the pity role. A young man sitting next to her was holding a beautifully grown kitten. Yes, they got a cat that's been fed here. Now I'm sorry he's gonna shit on the mat. They're all grown up. Well, you can have a little one, like mine. He's already trained in all cat manners. He looked at Camille carefully, and the woman was just surprised. What beautiful blue colors his eyes were. What a little ginger kitten. Yes, she had promised her daughter to get a kitten from the cat, her friend. But it looks like it didn't work out, or she changed her mind, but I'd be happy to take it. If you trust me with this little cutie, I will. I didn't know where to put this joy. Here at the bazaar, he'll be placed in your safe hands. Don't worry, the kitten is healthy. Our cat gave birth to him, taught him the finer points of cat etiquette, and this one was left as an orphan. Come on, I live in an apartment, and believe me, I promise him proper care. That's great. Then here you go. Take care, baby. The guy gave the kitten to Camille and patted it behind the ear, thanked the woman, and got out. She drove and fought. This is what she'd done. We have to go home now. Take this duck and trust him to her daughter. Buy food, all the food she needs for the cat. All right, baby, let's go to my house. I'll introduce you to my daughter. 10 minutes later, Camille was home and was glad that Elon hadn't gone anywhere. The daughter is the new tenant in the house. Camille shouted, taking off her shoes and putting her bag on the table in the hallway. Mom, what are you talking about? The daughter came out of her room and just wanted to ask who it was. She saw a small and red kitten in her mother's hands. Well, we all wanted a cat. A handsome blue-eyed guy gave it to me on the road. Now you dig, feed, and raise it. Oh, and by the way, go to the store and get everything you need. My mom's awesome. I'm glad you brought him, huh? 'Cause the cats had all the kittens. Great. Did you drive all the way home on purpose? Well, I can't go to the IRS with this mustachioed ginger joy. Go ahead and study. I'm moving on. And buy him some baby food, shouted Elon, and went to bathe the new pet, happy as a baby. Camille walked out of the house and smiled to herself. But here were at least 2 people, 1 kitten she made happy today. And that was worth living for, her husband. Come on, she had forgiven him long ago. After all, he gave her the priceless experience of happiness to be loved, to feel needed, even if only for a short period of time. What kind of eyes did he look at her with today? How surprised he was at her position and power. It was worth the trouble and misery, the money he had stolen. If it were not for luck, it was for misfortune. Already in the evening, sitting in the kitchen at his wife and daughter Redhead, Camille told how their new pet came to her, and then she herself did not understand why she said, "Stephen came to my company to apply for a job." That's Dad coming to work for you. Mom, are you saying you gave him a job, and by who? Are we a toilet or a yard? Daughter, I'm not judging you. He came in so ugly, beat up, like a yard dog asking for his bone under his shrunken tail. I couldn't help him. As manager, I can make the decision. I hope you won't regret it. And what kind of job did you entrust him with? Daughter squinted at her mother with a disgruntled look at the financier in the department advised, said that you need to learn. Mom, are you crazy? Dad's a finance guy. You want him to take over the farm for you, but not me. And you know, you'd never trust a rookie to do a complicated job, typing, tabulating. It's not like typing up an invoice. Yeah, and Stephen's been working in finance for years. He's not the best at what he does, but he can handle simple tasks. In fact, do you know what position he was originally going for? What job? The loader position. That's Stephen and a loader. He's already got a bad leg and a couple bags in his back, so he's gonna collapse right on the job. Mom, I hope you're not taking him back to the house. The daughter jumped up from the desk and grabbed the redhead on the arm. She glared angrily at her mother, and without waiting for a reply, tore into the room and straight out. Camille said quietly. The daughter simply did not hear her words, and she spoke more for herself than for anyone else. She felt sorry for Stephen, But Camille realized that there was no going back. The time when she pitied her husband, pulled him and the house around her neck, had passed. "Don't worry, daughter, everything will be all right." The woman put away all the compositions and, having taken a shower, went to the door of the room and quietly knocked. "Ladies, come in." "Elon, I wanted to tell you, or rather to reassure you, that your father will not return home. And we were happy at one time. He gave me you because I just helped him." Elon asked, "That's like a grown woman." "Yes, I believe that I gave him his debts to a certain extent. But the fact that he took your money that was set aside for my studies, that's nothing." "Elon, you're right, but in your own way. I think that's how I bought my freedom. That's the answer you're looking for. It's the reason I have a new job, a higher salary, and maybe a new beau for you and a new daddy for me. Elon, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but Christopher has a soft spot for you. That's great. And he's actually a very positive man. Although if Dad works at your company, I'm afraid to imagine Dad's reaction." "Okay, Mom, I agree with you, but be careful. You're hesitant. And Christopher wouldn't let me get away with it." The next morning, Camille almost fell on the doorstep of her own company. Stepping out of the elevator and rounded the corner on the way to her office, she came nose to nose with Stephen. The man was standing outside her office, holding a bouquet of white daisies and stomping from foot to foot. "Stephen, are you doing something?" Camille, from surprise, even almost fell to the marble floor. "It's Camille. I'm sorry about everything. I brought you your favorite daisies. I wanted to say thanks for doing it for me yesterday. I won't let you down now. I'll do my best at my new job." "Are you serious, Stephen?" The woman began to open the office with her key and walked inside. She gestured to the ex-husband of the passerby. "Stand there. See how I live. Here's my office and everything. Well, really, don't be mad at me. I was a fool to leave you, to take the money. I'll be helping out, by the way. I won't be able to pay for her studies, but I'll give her money for small purchases. I sinned. You don't have to, do you? I forgave you a long time ago. The only thing I want you to do is redecorate your room. You know, the stuff your mother left you when she was alive, if you remember." "Yes, she did," Stephen said with his head down. "Put a proper headstone on her grave. If you need money, I'll help you." "No need. I'll do it myself. Thanks again." She carefully put the bouquet of daisies on the table and quietly went out, closing the door behind her. God works in mysterious ways, Camille thought, and took the daisies in her hands, poked her nose into them, and breathed in the sweet fragrance of the meadow beauties. Camille stood at the window and smiled to herself. She felt light and warm at heart, for in essence, she now had everything she had lacked before freedom. The bases under her feet supported work and peace of mind at home. And most importantly, my daughter is studying where she wants to. And there's ginger happiness living in the house, just like I'd wanted for a long time. And God forbid Stephen gets over it. He'll find a girlfriend and make a lot of money like he always wanted. No, not a lot of money. And then again, a certain Jenna turns his head and leads him to spend his hard-earned money. The woman smiled to herself and put the daisies in a large vase, poured water from the bottle to the right into each branch, each leaf. "Thank you, Stephen. It won't go away. And then to this young one I would have started with you to this day. But now it will be new with new perspectives and plans for life with a different vision of what it means." "Camille, knock knock, may I come in?" Christopher's voice made her wince. "Yes, of course, come in. Do you want coffee?" "Bob, no, I'm here about something else. You endorsed your husband yesterday. Is that true?" "Yes, you're questioning my judgment." "It's not that. I agree with your decision. But tell me, what's confusing you?" "Stephen certainly wouldn't steal company money. He knows the job. He may not be a specialist like you, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm worried about you." Camille smiled to herself. Christopher's words pleased her more than ever. If he's worried, that is. "Are you jealous?" She looked at him in a way she hadn't looked at any man in a long time. Her boss's reaction once again confirmed her suspicions. He was in love with her, and the appearance of a spouse, even though a former spouse was on the horizon, made him jealous. If you like to think so, yes, and he's the one who brought you the daisies. Camille didn't know what to say. It didn't seem right to say nothing. And to say that the flowers were from her husband, even though he was her ex-husband, was to overstep the bounds of the fragile relationship, the feelings that had begun to bud between them. And they both knew that, so they didn't want to take it to the extreme. Christopher, it doesn't matter who gave it to me. Just understand, it's my past. I let it go. Understand me and forgive me. And if you feel the need to fire him, that's fine with me. But just please give Stephen a chance to prove himself. If he fails, I will fire him with all proletarian hatred. And you, dear Camille, for this decision of yours. Dinner at the restaurant in my company. Are you inviting me? Yes, this Friday, and I won't take no for an answer. The man smiled and made a theatrical vow. He left Camille's office. Jesus, she thought. Is it really a holiday on my street? And the woman really felt like Cinderella who got to the ball and squeezed her eyes shut. Camille ducked her face into the bouquet of daisies, allowing new feelings to rush into her life. And then whatever happens from there. Maybe she'd get lucky and Christopher would really be her prince. She'll find true feminine happiness for once.